Now, welcome to the Brickyard. We're here for another race of GT3 Endurance, round 5 of the season, and it's certainly been a very intriguing one so far, with the likes of Burst Esport doing really well, but there's plenty of other teams trying to get onto the podium, so we're looking for a very exciting race here at Indianapolis. It's myself, Cameron Roger, and today joining me is Hugo Barrow. And Hugo, how are you feeling for this one? It's certainly a very exciting track.
Yeah, definitely. And we've seen some interesting pace. I think the fastest qualifying lap was all the way down into the 121s. So some very big pace, but also with what we saw in the VEC, I think we're in for a good race actually. And it should be quite intense, quite a close one, especially with a relatively short lap time. And also these curbs as well. There's some points of the track, such as onto the back straight, you've got to be really careful through that chicane because we're going to see a lot of cars bouncing up and down over those curbs. And it's going to be interesting to see as well how the straight line speed compares to the cornering speed in different parts of the track, because this has just got such a mix.
Yeah, it's certainly quite an interesting track, and obviously we're using the latest layout as well, with the sort of the awkward little final sector as well, which can always be some enjoyment and some action there. But here is your championship standings. You've got Burst Esport leading the way by quite a little margin now, actually, to Evolution Motorsports. They're over 60 points advantage. So that is looking good for them, but there are still 4 rounds to go this season, so all to play for. And Go Team Racing, they have had an unbelievably good season, very consistent, not quite on the top pace, but definitely good enough to be there in that 3rd place in the championship. Then we have, as you see, the likes of Knight of Velux, Williams behind them, Drillers as well, Pescara also in there. So yeah, plenty of guys, and it's certainly starting to spread out a little bit, but Burst have just been so good this season, haven't they?
Yeah, they've just been at the forefront of everything we've seen so far. You can see that by their monumental lead of 62 points. Compare that to the gap between 2nd and 3rd, and you realise just how quick they have been this season. I mean, they've won almost every race so far, and we are halfway now. So it's gonna be interesting to see how other teams retaliate. But elsewhere on the grid as well, we've got some really close gaps, such as right now you can see between 21 and 22. That's just 2 points. Between the core team car and Speedy Mite Racing. You can see Speedy Mite, they've only attended the last 2 races, the number 93 car. However, they look to be on a relatively good form. So we'll see how that pans out for the rest of the season. But as well, you can just see with the lower areas anyway, that there are some relatively close gaps, and the championship is far from finished. But right now, my money would be on Burst to win.
Yeah, it'd be quite difficult to write them off. As you say, they've done very well. As you see here, we've had Silverstone, Nürburgring, Imola, Portland, and we are now on to the second half of the season, where we are obviously staying in the United States for Indianapolis, and then we will head to Bathurst, Suzuka, and also Spa-Francorchamps as well. So plenty of good races. In fact, those next 3 races after this one, Bathurst, Suzuka, and Spa, are potentially 3 of the best, just generally endurance tracks, but also GT car tracks as well. So definitely looking forward to them. But today, 27th of February, our focus is obviously here in Indianapolis to see if the likes of Burst Esport can come out once again on top. And one of the main reasons why they've been so good this season is because they have 4 amazing drivers in their lineup. Where today we're going to have Michi Hoyer, and I believe it's David Mrocek is going to be joining him in the car today. So you might think, oh, there are a couple of different drivers from before, but because all 4 of those drivers are so good, they're able to keep it at the top.
Yeah, and it's going to be Michi Hoyer who starts for the Burst esports team, and he's the one who set a 21.9 in qualifying. So you can just see the absolute pace of this driver and of this team. But Renko Major for Undercover Sim Racing, the Bentley having quite a good show here in qualifying, so it's going to be interesting to see how that translates into the race, because from what I've heard at least, it's got quite good straight line speed at the moment.
Yeah, there was a recent, well, only just a few days ago actually, BOP update from the studio, which means that this is a slightly different situation to what we had before. And obviously these drivers had to select their cars way back. It might even been in August or at least September that they had to choose their cars, and they're not allowed to change during the season. So you're sort of limited a little bit to how the BOPs go. And as I said, there's one that's just been released a few days ago, so we'll have to see exactly how that changes the lineup, because quite a number of the cars got various different weight or power differences. Won't go through all of them because there's a lot of numbers there that will get confusing, but some people are saying that the Bentley is going to be looking quite good, so we'll have to see if that one translates over to the race, because they were struggling at a few races earlier this season.
What's interesting there is that's Remco Major pulling into the pit lane. You can see he's going quite fast through there. We've also had the livery updates, and HM Engineering are now Snow Shatten Motorsports with a new livery, so that's one to look out for as we see the race carry on. So that will have Pedro Delgado at the wheel, number 34. But yeah, I'm not sure how many other livery changes there have been, but it's going to be an interesting race. You can see it's quite overcast here in Indianapolis, so the weather could have an interesting effect. I know it's 29 degrees Celsius on track right now, whereas the air temp is only 1 degree Celsius according to my information here at least. So it's a relatively warm track, and we'll see how that has an effect on the drivers as well as we get ready for the race to start in just a few moments' time.
Yeah, the Snow Shatten entry is quite interesting. I haven't seen that name around, at least in rFactor 2. I know they have continued to do things on the Codemasters case, but for rFactor, I haven't seen them around for a couple of years now, so it's good to see them back. And I believe, as they're still the number 34, that they've sort of taken over the HM Engineering entry, and therefore I believe they are keeping their points, which means they're currently 12th in the standings on 55 points, and they're actually not too far away, only about 15 points away from the top 8. So certainly it looks like they can, if they keep on improving and keep on getting those points, which they struggled in a couple of races earlier this season, then they could still move up, which is always good to see. I should say it's a bit cloudy, so maybe maybe see if there's going to be some rain or something like that coming, because the weather is a bit interesting in America at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing to mention as well, Snow Shatten, they're starting slap bang in the middle of the grid today, P17. So that's going to be quite risky, especially with quite a tight turn one. That chicane is going to provide overtaking opportunities. And with that start, however, there has been a change because it is now single file start as a result of what happened in Portland and previous races as well. So that's going to make it a little bit more difficult to try and go for those moves right off the start. And it's going to mean the drivers are going to have to work harder as the race progresses, because they've got 3 hours to try and get those positions up, climb up as high as they can go, and that's just going to make it that little bit more difficult for them.
Yeah, it's probably a bit of a good change, I would say, because that accident in turn 1 in Portland was just obviously a little bit unnecessary, and it obviously took Williams on that occasion out, and I think there were maybe even 5 wide going to turn 1, but there was at least four cars going in there. So yeah, certainly good that they've reverted to a slightly safer option. And as you say, there's still 3 hours of racing, still plenty of racing to see what these guys can do. So let's go through the grid. We got Burst Esports on the pole position with Undercover Sim Racing in second place, Cetres Nita Velox in third place, followed by Drillers. Then we have One Move Esports, Go Team Racing, Evolution Motorsports, a little bit lower down than you'd expect them, in seventh place, and the number 60 in eighth. And they do have a couple of drive-through penalties to serve from last race. Blackbirds Racing in 9th. That's a good improvement from them, with Wanako in 10th, Pescara in 11th, and Revo Satellite Racing in 12th place. So once again, they doing an improvement as well. So the Bentley is looking good on the new BOP. Goodyear Mascala in 13th, followed by the new team Snow Shatten Esports, followed by Court Team, and then Pro Simtech. Now Volante Racing in the Soul Aston Martin down there in 17th place, followed by Absolute Motorsport, Core Team Racing, and Omicron Sim Racing as well. And towards the rear of the field, we've got Seawolf, Net Race, Speedy Mite, Pro Simtech, and Core Team. So Pro Simtech and Core Team with 2 or 3 cars each in this series. And then we have Joy Racing in 25th place, another Bentley, Speedy Mite in 26th, Caspian Motorsport in 27th, Pushrod Racing in 28th place. Then to round off the grid, we have Trojan Donut Automotive in 29th place. The Flying Goat still down, fortunately near the back in that Mercedes. in 30th place, and then Speedy Might bringing up the rear of the field in 31st. So 31 cars are taking the start of this 3 hours of Indianapolis. And as you say, it's a single file start, so slightly different here. We'll have to see how that one translates towards the battles in the first couple of laps. But I can certainly tell you on the formation lap that Timo Andonovski there in 4th place is certainly ready to go, as he is all over the back of Mika Happinen in 3rd place as well. He is ready to go, but we'll have to wait till the drivers come around sector 3.
Indeed, the drivers aren't now allowed to release the pit limiter because, of course, they do the formation lap on the pit limiter. I believe they can't release it until they themselves cross the line. So that's another thing that's going to increase the gaps a little as well into turn 1, along with the now single file start. So it's going to be quite a bit more difficult maybe for some of the drivers, but definitely a lot safer for that turn 1. As we are about to get underway though at Indianapolis, just a few corners to go, just a few seconds, and we will be getting going.
I did mention a couple of cars there with some penalties. So we do have the number 60, which is that Knight of Velux car. The second of the Knight of Velux cars has 2 drive-through penalties. The number 29 as well also has a couple of penalties. That's Pro Sim Tech Black. Has a couple of penalties from last time as well. The number 11 also, which is the other Pro Sim Tech car. So yeah, quite a few penalties that we'll have to look out for. But now we come around the final corner. And as you say, once they get to the start finish line, they themselves can get racing, and it should be a nice progressive even start. So there shouldn't be any crashes into turn 1 on this occasion. Let's see what the number 49 Burst Esport can do. Mitch Hoyer at the wheel, Remco Major just behind him. And we'll get going for 3 hours here in Indianapolis, the 5th race of the season. So here we go. Mitchy Hoyer is starting the race. And now we've got to see what these drivers can do as we go towards, it looks like maybe the sunset. The sun's getting already pretty low here in Indianapolis. And now we are going down into turn 1. And let's see what these drivers can do.
Yeah, well, we're starting at 7 p.m. and it's going to be Mitchy Hoyer still leading, but P3 and P4, that's Timo Andonovski and Mika Happinen, they are very close. That gap between them very shrinking rapidly. You'll see it just in the corner of our screen now. This is Timo Andonovski as we ride on board. Really close behind as they head onto the back straight, riding those curves. And this slipstream looks to be to his benefit because he's got quite the straight line speed. He's going to be forced to go to the outside though, into the braking zone. Can he hold it around the outside? Has he got enough grip? The track hasn't rubbered in yet. That might be to his advantage. He touches the grass, but it's going to be the inside for the second part. They touch again with each other. There's a little bit of contact. He's going to try and switch sides with Mika Happinen, but he's just not finding the room to get past there. Having a good crack at it though to try and get up into that podium position, but this is going to mean that the leader is going to be 3 seconds up the road. And speaking of which, Remco Major really having a go at Mitchy Hoyer already as well. So already up in the top 4, we've got some battles emerging. That gap now between the Burst Esports Callaway Corvette and the Undercover Sim Racing Bentley very low, and I think we might see the effect of the Bentley straight line speed with the slipstream from the Corvette, and you can see in the top right as well the onboard from Andonovski's Corvette as well. That gap closing down quite a lot under braking, and this means that Mitchy Hoyer is under real pressure, and it looks like the Undercover Sim Racing team could be very strong this evening and contenders for a win.
They haven't had the best start to the season. At one point, we did have an interview with Remco, and he said at that point where the BOP was, they were just doing it for fun. They knew that the Bentley was that far off, but now they're in this position to at least fight for this victory. I'm sure Mitchy Hoyer and the Burst Esport guys weren't expecting, at least Undercover, to be challenging them this much. But look at this under the brakes, getting really close to Mitchy Hoyer. So Remco's really feeling this, and I think he sees the opportunity to take the lead of a race, which is something that they haven't done in a little while, at least in this series as well. So needs to make sure, because I believe just came up on the screen was him actually getting a penalty, which must be from the previous race, which is going to destroy that battle a little bit, and that could be another reason why he wants to get on with this.
Indeed, but we're going to head straight to Andonovski now because he is still piling the pressure on. But yeah, with Remco Major, he might have the pace. If he can get past, he might be able to mitigate at least some of the damage that drive-through penalty is going to deal to him, which, yeah, he must have got from last time out at Portland, because I know that wet race was quite dramatic. But Mitchy Hoyer so far second the fastest lap with a 1:23 there, but into turn one under braking. Andonovski going to send it down the inside of Mika Hakkinen. Can he hold it there though? Yes, he can. He's going to force Hakkinen slightly wide, and he's going to take that position. You can see a bit of a slide on, but that is going to be third place for the Pinsim Drillers car.
Yeah, nice overtake. Timo has seen that the top two are getting away, and he doesn't want to lose out any more than he has to. And yeah, just double check. The number 45 does have a penalty from the previous race, which is the penalty that came up on the screen for Remco. So he's going to have to serve that in a couple of laps' time. Otherwise, he will get a disqualification from the race. But he's all over the back of Michi. He really feels that this is going to be a race for them. Obviously, this drive-through is going to put them down the order just a little bit. But looking at the pace that they've got, I think they're going to be able to come back from this over the course of those 3 hours.
Yeah, the undercover sim racing Bentley is looking incredibly strong. I mean, you can already tell from the gap pulled out to Andonovski behind. That's 4 seconds at the moment. So these top two guys, we have got a real contender, but he is going to have to try and work his way back from the penalty, which he'll be serving imminently. And with the pace they've got, though, this could not, it might not be quite as bad. They might be able to pull back some of the time. You can see that now with Remco Major setting a 1:23.4, which is now the fastest lap of the race. We've lost the car though. That's Andriari Harry. Yes, sorry, but that is going to be the first car out of the race in P31, leaving us with just 30 contenders for the rest of the positions on track. Now we're riding on board with another Bentley, Mathieu de Croo, who we're going to move straight away from again, because Remco Major still half a second behind Michi Hoyer, which means that he does have the pace to keep up with the championship leader.
Yeah, he certainly does. And yeah, I feel that Remco's really feeling it today. We just got to see actually where he drops back to in the traffic, because obviously one of the things with the penalties, how they're applied in SRCs, you get them at the beginning of the race, so the cars are still going to be really close together. And this is not a short pit lane by any means. It's going to be somewhere in the region of 25 seconds just to do a drive-through penalty. So this is going to put him somewhere probably around nearing 20th position. And he has stayed out, so he's obviously trying to let that gap behind him open up as much as possible. And if he does have any sort of engineer with him, they'll be trying to work that out. What is the best lap to take the penalty? And it seems he isn't quite close enough to overtake Michi, so that Corvette is still looking pretty nice. But someone who could be making an overtake is De Croo as he comes down towards turn one. He's getting the slipstream. It's going to be a late dive on the brakes. Going to be all over that ABS, but he's not going to be close enough to get Hakkinen there, who keeps hold of 4th place.
Yeah, and we see Michi Hoyer now retaliate. He's beginning to pull away from Remco Major, maybe just a little bit slow off that start. But look at this, Mathieu de Croo really piling the pressure onto the back of that Cetres Nita Velux McLaren. You can see onto the straight as well. This is where the Bentley has its legs. With the slipstream as well, it doesn't look like he's going to be quite close this attempt, but he might have a go into turn one at the start of the very next lap. But you can see all over the track, really, we've got some really close racing beginning to emerge. Just onto the grass slightly goes McDuff here, who's battling for 4th. So this is going to be quite close, actually. And you can see already that this is going to be an intense battle. And we're now riding on board with Borja Milan in the BMW, I believe, trying to just use that slipstream and close up that gap to the front of him. And you can see right now that this battle does look to be going on for quite a while. These guys all seemingly relatively equally matched for pace. As they head onto the main straight now, we could see an attempt at some position shuffling. You can see the P9 car there with Andre Alexander Baumgarten. He is very close behind Rory McDuff. He could go for a move here under braking. They're in the same machine, but it's just not going to be a close enough gap to really have a go at it, as he actually lags a lot, and that's going to be him potentially disconnecting already. So that's a really early calamity, actually, and that could be a potential second DNF, because when they reconnect, though, they are going to be quite far behind the rest of the grid.
Yeah, you do not want to be having a disconnection. This car that we're on board with, Borja Milan, you can bring that up with them if you want to annoy them, because they, unfortunately, especially with Nico Barkley, have had a couple of disconnections this season to really put them down the order in the standings. away from where you'd think that they would be. They're currently 17th in the standings. They've had issues last race and in the first race of the season as well. So here is Andrea Maharazoa, who is going to DNF, but how...
I think he shifted down too quickly. Yeah.
That looks like he may have blown his engine, which is definitely possible in these cars if you downshift them too much. And unfortunately, that is going to be them out of the race because you can't come back from a broken engine.
No, definitely not. And that is a real shame, actually, to go out so early on in the race. But this is Remco Major now serving his drive-through penalty. He's going to come out quite far down the order now because it is so early on. There's going to be a lot of traffic for him to navigate as he tries to climb back up the order. So it was obviously not an ideal start, but with the pace they're already showing, this might not be quite as bad as it could have been before the BOP changes. And you can see him already leaving the pit lane now. And yeah, we're going to ride on board with Remco Major.
And really tricky pit exit there, actually. Come out straight onto the apex. It turns out someone went for a spin there. In the picture it was too small to see who that was, but someone went around. It looks like maybe one of the core team cars. 16th place is dropping down the field a little bit. And top left, Roy Duff gets a penalty, but that, I would assume, is going to be his second one because that number 60 car had 2 penalties from the previous race. But with that all working itself out, we now get Andonovski up in second place, trying to chase down Mitchell Hoyer, who's now got a lead of almost 6 seconds, which is quite comfortable, especially if you're someone who's used to being at the front, such as Mitchell Hoyer.
Definitely, and this is Alice Plaver. So yeah, you were right about core team. Just a little bit overzealous on the throttle, I think, on the exit of that first chicane.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because these cars do have traction control. However, if you use traction control, it is naturally slower because obviously it's cutting the power. It's a lot better if you just nicely go onto the throttle. It's a lot quicker. So obviously some teams will be playing around with the TC settings, trying to get them as low as possible. And if you go a little bit too low, then you will obviously end up spinning around as well. So it's unfortunately what's happened to them. Now we have Omicron trying to come down on the back of Absolute Motorsport for 14th place. And this is for some decent points because points go all the way down to 30th position in this championship. So as we were saying earlier in the standings page, a lot of those gaps in that mid part of the field are really, really close. So these are the important positions for these teams in the midfield.
Yeah, definitely, and especially as we wear on to the second half of the season, every point is going to matter, especially in those closer positions in the championship. Potentially those lower down where points are a little bit harder to come by and therefore are really quite valuable, especially with the proximity of these cars. And you're seeing now the Christian Riva car just ahead of Giancarlo Costa. You can see the Sealift Design sponsor on that rear wing as they head out of the final turn, not the final turn rather, but you can see Giancarlo Costa having a bit of a slide on through the exit there, and that's going to compromise his speed a little bit and allow that gap to expand as well. But this is Osasuya Mumwen with the Speedy Mike car. He's actually defending now from Alice Plaver, who we saw go for that spin just a lap or so ago, maybe 2 laps ago. That gap half a second. It's going to be a better exit though for the Porsche outfit as they run as wide as possible, almost onto the grass there as they head onto the main straight now. But Osasuya Mumwen, he's going to try and close up those cars in front and try and increase that gap behind to Alice Plaver.
In the Speedy Mike cars, always we have a big late dive here from Costa. He's going to make it on the apex. You know, he's going to have to go all over the curb to avoid contact. That was a late dive there from Costa. Couldn't quite make that work, but it was a little bit too late really, and he's going to have to try and work that one again. But fortunately, there was no big accident there because that was looking like it was going to be a little bit of an awkward situation on the curb. But he's got a good exit here, out onto the back straight. Much better exit, in fact, than Christian River on the inside now, coming down the back straight into turn number 7. Who's going to be latest on the brakes? It looks like it's going to be Christian River for Absolute Motorsport to hold on to that P14, but they do have Speedy Mike coming after them as well. So if this battle gets any more Larry, they might be losing 2 positions.
Well, you can see Giancarlo Costa all over the track, just trying to get as much speed as possible and find a gap through. But we're going to have a replay here of that move from Giancarlo Costa, trying to go around the outside. had the cutback, but it just wasn't quite enough because you could see he had to correct a bit of a slide before going onto the grass a little bit, turning in slightly too early. But this means that Osasuya Munwen and Alice Paver, the Speed and White and the core team cars, are going to be behind as well. So now we've got a four-way battle for P14, and this could be really interesting because there's a little bit of a gap up the road as well. So they're going to have to try and close that down as this race progresses.
And just on a side note, last lap, guess who was fastest? Remco Major for Undercover Sim Racing. They have dropped down into 12th place. So they lost around 25 seconds in the course of that drive-through penalty. So we're going to have to see how they can come back through the field from this 12th place. Because, as I said, they're faster than the leaders. In fact, they're faster than everyone else on the track. And that looks good, like it's going to work its way into a conundrum. And as we get towards the end of or towards the middle part of the race even. So let's see what Costa can do this time. Once again, late on the brakes, but not late enough. He's having to wiggle around a little bit. And it looks like he's trying to be maybe a little bit impatient. Because if he's not careful, he is actually going to lose position from all these tiny little mistakes that are going to add up. As you can see there, once again, running wide and losing time on the apex.
Yeah, you can see him fishtailing actually as he's stamped on the brakes really hard. But Munwen now, he's going to go for a move down the inside. Is he going to be able to hold it? Yes, he is. Now, Alice Paver is in quite a good position to move on Costa. So this could be quite a bad lap actually for Giancarlo Costa in that Aston Martin. You can see really on the edge of grip as they head out onto the straight, and he's gone through the I think it was a bit of a latency error there because he's still on the track, but he's trying to follow that slipstream. Alice Paver from 3.5 tenths of a second back. He is deciding not to go for that move, just had a peek down the inside, but it does look like Costa could have some internet issues. We're going to go down to Remco Major now, who's going to be on a charge up the road. He's trying to just regain those positions he lost. Up ahead of him is Michael Francesconi in the Pescara ATP Auto Tyler BMW, and you can see he's really close behind. Remco Major is going to be trying to slice his way through the traffic and just try and make up as many positions as possible. As we've seen, they have the pace to do it this evening.
Yeah, they certainly do, but he needs to be just calm and precise with how he makes these overtakes. We'll see there he's already having a little bit of a look on Francesconi, but he doesn't need to ruin this race. They've clearly got the pace, and over the course of the next 2 hours and 43 minutes, they're going to get plenty of opportunities to make an overtake. So he doesn't need to rush these or cause a crash, get a penalty for the next race, that sort of stuff. Just needs to make sure that he does these nicely, and he's got a really, really good run there out of Sector 3 onto the start-finish straight, and it looks like he's going to get his nose down the inside. Is he going to be strong enough on the brakes to get past the number 8 Pescara car? Yes, he can, and that is one position down for Remco Major. Just 10 to go if he wants to win this race.
Yeah, I mean, he's currently how many seconds off the leaders here? It looks like he's 1 minute 20. No, that was his last lap. He's 23 or 24 seconds off the lead. With the current pace, though, he should be able to maybe get up into those top 5 within the course of the race at least. Maybe push even further than that just with the speed of that Bentley. But we're going to go down to Georgi Nadev now as there are yellow flags in Sector 1. I think we have a DNF. That looks like Andre Muscala for the Muscala team. He's going to be out of the race, which is really unfortunate for them. And also is that Tuna Gerardiglio for the number 75 Caspian Motorsport car also out. And I think there's been a collision between those two cars because they seem to have gone out at exactly the same time. And that leaves us with just 28 cars, I think, remaining on track. I think Alexander Palmgarten, he has rejoined, but he's a lap down on the next car. But this is Georgi Nadev and Leon Bock. Leon Bock with the Evolution Motorsports, a car we know is very fast with that drive. And you can see just how close to the outside wall they get, maximizing the radius of that turn to just try and carry as much speed as possible. But Georgi Nadev with the Go Team car, he is very quick as well, and it looks like he's going to be able to put up quite a good fight with Borja Milan beginning to join on the rear of this party. So we've got a three-way BMW fight for P5 as they are quite evenly matched drives. You can see that just by the gap. But this is going to be a replay actually of Tuna Gerardiglioglu, sorry, and he's gone very deep. and he's taken the escape route, so I'm not quite sure. Has he
Did he
had a
blow?
similar engine failure?
Yeah, he may have blown his engine as well. Unfortunately, we don't get the sound of that, but it potentially there was an engine failure as he now come back to Remco Major. He's already got himself up into a 10th place and now is on the back of Pedro Delgado on this newly rebranded number 34 car. Snow Shatton Esports is the name of it now, but they are going down towards 10th position as Remco Major gets past another one. He's still about 25 seconds off the lead, so he needs to make sure that even when he's making these moves, he's not losing too much time, as 25 seconds on the likes of Drillers or Burst Esport is going to be very, very difficult to get back. So we'll have to see how this one works over the course of the next stint or so.
Okay, so I've just received word that the other DNS, that's the Scuderia Mascala car, that was a sudden disconnection, which is really unfortunate. Hopefully they'll be able to rejoin and get back onto the pace. But yeah, you're seeing with Remco Major, he was getting ridiculously close. Now, Georgia Nadev has actually caught up to, it looks like a Speedy Mike Porsche, which is a lap down. I'm not sure which car that is, but they're going to be able to get past quite well as they enter the braking zone. Leon Bock running very deep. This could give Borja Milan as he cuts across him, actually. That's going to be a bit of contact, potentially some front suspension damage, and that is not what you want to see from the Evolution Motorsports. That could have ended a lot worse than it did, with the Wanako being able to hold on to their position as well and just keeping it on track. But that was very interesting.
Yeah, that was very close to a big accident. You're right, and these guys need to be careful because they don't want to be losing too much time. There's now a bit of a gap forming to that 4th place. So maybe these 3 BMWs need to work together just a little bit to make sure that they're not losing too much time, because that would be getting a little bit counterproductive for these guys, as they are having a very good battle, not just here, but also in the standings as well. These three have always been fairly close to each other on the track throughout the first half of the season. As you now see Rory McDuff, the number 60, coming back from their 2 drive-through penalties, on the back now of Zupan for Trojan Donut Automotive into the final sector bar. It's such a difficult turn here because this curb on the inside is absolutely massive, and then that would chuck you out into that grass if you're not too careful. So Rory here trying to line it up to come out of the final corner and get a nice slipstream down into turn 1.
Yeah, and you're seeing just how difficult it can be for the drivers to find the way through because of the curb size. They just spit you, as you said. But Rory McDuff now with the slipstream, he could maybe get past before the braking zone. We're going to look at the rear wing cam, and he is going to get ahead before they reach the apex. Gasper Zupan maybe going for a slightly better exit. You can see still trying to keep up, but onto the curb he's had a bit of a slide there, and that's going to compromise his exit and secure Rory McDuff's position there in P22. But we're going to head back up the order to this BMW battle for P5 with Leon Bock still following quite close. And this is going to be an onboard actually from that incident we saw just last lap at the end of the back straight. Borja Milan then, he took the apex normally, but Leon Bock, he cut across. He went too deep and he did cut across. So fortunately that didn't end any worse than it did.
Yeah, Leon just came back a little bit too far to the left, but fortunately the contact was very slight, and I do believe that shouldn't be too much in the way of performance damage for these guys either. And it does seem that it's not that excessive anyway, because they're still on the back of Georgi Nedev. And remember, this is quite a crucial fight actually. This is 2nd and 3rd in the championship. Evolution Motorsports are 2nd, the number 27, 20 points ahead of Go Team Racing in 3rd in the championship. And unfortunately, the car behind them, Wanako, has had a few issues, but they would certainly work their way up from where they are now fairly quickly if they can score these big points. They're currently down in a 17th place in the championship, but this is quite a crucial one, at least for Go Team Racing and Evolution, because this is going to shape the battle as we get towards this second half of the season. It's going to be, can Go Team Racing challenge the big boys towards the end, or are they going to just fade away a little bit? But for now, Nedev is pulling them up into some good positions.
And we're seeing Giancarlo Costa now making a move, but he's... Oh, that was close. I'm not sure who was at fault there. Looks like he maybe wasn't quite as alongside Arriva as he might have wanted to be, as through the braking zone there. It might be interesting to see a replay of that. You can see Giancarlo Costa, he's still trying to make his way up. And now is Munwen leading this. and just a little bit up the road as well is Radek Siek, and you can see there Riva running slightly wide, and this could give Giancarlo Costa an opportunity to try and get it on the exit. You can see he's just slightly too aggressive on the power there, a little bit slippery, and that's going to compromise that exit speed, scrub it off a little bit. And Alice Paver as well, just behind. So that's going to be another threat for this Aston Martin driver to contend with. But as they head along the straight now, still in P14, and he's going to have a look up the inside, actually just not finding the rim there. That was from quite a way back. So I think that may have been a little bit ambitious, but you can see he's really pushing, really sticking his tail out.
Yeah, he's been trying for quite a few laps now to get past River in front of him, but fortunately he can't find a place to put his Aston Martin down the inside of that Callaway Corvette. So he's going to need to try and do it in a slightly more safe place, as we get a replay here from the back of Amunwen, and that looks like, well, actually, to be fair, I think he just about had himself there. It was a late dive though, but River certainly wasn't leaving him loads of room on the apex. So Costa does need to make sure that he gets his car there nice and early to make sure that there's absolutely no arguments when they get to the apex, because they've done that 3 or 4 times now, and one time that is going to turn into a nasty accident. So they need to be careful with that one, especially as I mentioned, those points in that mid part of the pack where it's very crucial in the championship, because you can easily jump up a few positions, up or down, that is, if you have one good race and you gain 5 or 6 positions. So just staying towards the end of the race and not getting involved in those accidents will be quite crucial for them.
Yeah, definitely. And we're seeing how Giancarlo Costa is really pushing. I mean, we've still got 2 hours, 34 minutes to go. So a long way in this race yet. But those early positions can be helpful if you have got the pace. But it looks like Costa just isn't quite able to find the room. We're seeing the effect of these really high curves here around Indianapolis in the heavy braking zones. It means taking the inside line is a little bit more risky, and also that little bit more difficult, because you can't carry quite as much speed if you go over it, because it will really upset your car. And now we're seeing a Bentley battle as well with Tom Kapusta ahead of Remco Major. So this could just be undercover with absolute speed. But Giancarlo Costa around the outside of Riva into the braking zone. It's going to be a big slide onto the grass. Goes the Aston Martin. He's not on the racing line. Plaver is going to Brickle, is going to be able to get past, as is Plaver. But that is not good news, and we were talking about that just a moment ago, how it could turn into a nasty accident. Luckily, that wasn't nasty, but it was certainly an accident, with Georgie Nadev now trying to block Leon Bock, taking the inside line. This could be very close. Whoever carries the speed for this second part of the chicane will come out on top. And we could actually see Borja Milan with the Wanako outfit right up behind Leon Bock now, trying to carry as much speed as possible. These guys are really close, less than half a second between 5th and 7th as they head through the chicane onto the back straight. Can Leon Bock, with the slipstream, try and find his way through Georgie Nadev into that 5th position? It just looks like the BMWs are too evenly matched in straight line speed, as it is literally a train of 3 cars heading through the track right now.
That is one issue, as you say. If you choose the same car or the same chassis as a few around you, that makes it purely on the driver talent. There is no individual BOP or driver BOP or team BOP. It's purely for the chassis. So that makes it even harder for these guys. And we're going to see a replay here. So once again, River gets quite a bad exit out of that chicane. He's done that a few times now, so Costa is going to go to the outside and probably get a little bit overexcited, thinking that he's finally made that position, but he's going to go in way too quick. Rear is going to go around onto the grass. Unfortunately, the way that the racing line naturally goes, it seems that everyone managed to avoid him, which is a nice position for those guys, because it's always bad when you get involved in someone else's accident. But for now, this number 97, just holding on from the number 27 still. Nadev, once again, putting in a good race for his team.
Definitely. He's putting up quite a good fight, actually, holding these guys behind him. He's only got to do it for, I don't know, another hour until he gets out of the car. But if he can start pulling away, maybe try and wear the guys behind him tyres out, just try and push them as hard as they can go, because right now it doesn't look like it's very easy for these guys to overtake each other. And off in the background, you can see the ominous silhouette of Remco Major having just gone past Mathieu de Croo in the One Move Esports Bentley. And you can see, yeah, just ran slightly wide to De Croo, and that gave Major the opportunity he needed to get past an equal chassis. So you can just see, I think the car and driver combination really working well right now for the Undercover Sim Racing team. And yeah, his next sight is on Borja Milan. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Remco Major arrive at this battle and really spice things up between them.
Yeah, that'd be quite an interesting one. But as you see, he's now, what's that, 6 seconds behind Milan, but he's 26 seconds. So he's actually lost a little bit of time. Only a couple of seconds over the last sort of five, 6 laps. So he's maybe slightly slower than Michi Hoyer, but he's only 20 seconds off Antonovsky in second place, which could be at least the goal, the end goal after 2.5 hours. But we will have to see how quick Provorst is, Remco's teammate, as well. Because obviously they have to have a driver change, and that's one reason why Burst have been so good this season, because it doesn't matter who they put in the car, they're always quick, whereas certain other teams maybe have a standout driver, and obviously over the course of the season that will add up just a little bit. But now we're going to look at Serato, who's going to be defending here from Pimenta into turn number 1, where it looks like it's actually slightly maybe outbroken himself, or just taking it easy at least into turn number 1. And this is quite a nice battle actually forming. These guys obviously been gifted a position with Costa going for the spin a couple of laps ago.
Yeah, now the pressure is going to be mounting on Roman Prickrell just at the head of this little battle, because he's got quite the gap in front of him to Alice Plaver in the another core team car. But it's going to be Pimenta actually trying to get past Fernando Carato, moving to the inside as Fennel ahead on the inside of Prickrell. We could see 2 moves simultaneously. No, we won't, but it is going to be P18 for that BMW driven by Pimenta, just about squeezing ahead of Carato. The same cannot be said though for Fennel in the Speedy Mike Porsche.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, losing that position, but they're still in a fairly good fight, so just need to make sure. Oh, that's going to be getting very close for Antonovsky. Where's he come from? He must have had a spin. Antonovsky must have had a spin. We were just saying that he was in second place. He was someone that Major should be challenging maybe in an hour or two's time, but he's fallen back here into 6th place, so he's got involved in this 3-way battle of the BMWs. Now Milan is going to be seeing this opportunity to get a position, but now it is from Antonovsky, so I wonder what's happened to Drillers.
Indeed. Well, that does mean that it's only Mika Happinen now who's in any way challenging Michi Hoyer. He's about halfway between Mathieu de Croo and the Burst Esports in the lead. And actually, that's to mention, Mathieu de Croo with the One Move Esports Bentley, he's up in P3. So it's not just Remco Major who's got the pace, but it is interesting to see that Antonovsky has fallen to P6, and it'll be very interesting to see what happened. And we're going to see that now in the top right. Through the first chicane, then he's gone over the curb and he's touched the grass, and it's just sucked him off the track and into a spin, which is so easy to do on this track because there is very limited runoff in many places.
And now we got Bok. Is he going to finally get past Nadev down into turn number 1? He's going to be looking, at least. It's going to be a late dive on the apex. They're going to be side by side, and I think he's actually going to make that work as we get to turn 2. And now Antonovsky's going to be blocked off there by Nadev, who's now having to go into defensive mode once again, and he's keeping the inside for turn number 4 as well. So Antonovsky there, after his little spin, as you say, it's so easy to do there. Just touching the grass. There's no curb there. It's just straight, either tarmac or grass. And now he's going to have to defend a little bit from Borja Milan if he doesn't go for this overtake on Nadev into turn number 7. But it looks like it's going to be just a little bit too far this time, but he's going to have to work his way up. And then once again, Nadev is going to be defending from a car as he's causing a little bit of a train behind him in the last few laps.
Yeah, definitely. Now with one car past him, a similar trend could follow, especially with Antonovsky, a very quick driver in a very quick car. He's going to be looking to get past as well, try and regain some of that time he lost in that little spin there, because we've had 1/6 of the race so far. Still quite a long way to go, but every minute will matter, especially when you're challenging for those championship points in such a competitive team as the Pinson Drillers car with that's Callaway Corvette and Andonovski at the helm, and he could be in a place to overtake Georgi Nadev into turn 1. They are going to be side by side. Under braking though, I would be surprised if Andonovski can't pull it off, because he's really going to squeeze Nadev up against the wall, but he's going to be able to hold it through having that line in front for the second part of the chicane. And it's going to be P5 for Andonovski as he tries to recover from that incident just a few laps ago.
And will Nadev make it 3 positions lost in 3 laps? We will find out. But firstly, here is this first one. Leon Bock giving him just enough room on the exit to make sure that he can't come back into turn 2. So nice move there from Leon Bock for Evolution Motorsports, and that has now released them up into 4th place, as we're going to see Munwen now going side by side with a Cirque, I believe that is, coming into turn 3 and now into turn 4, and he's made his way up into 12th place. That number 91 is improving, but they do have a 21-second gap in front of them now. So this battle that's formed, and we've gone back to a few times, has really caused that gap to open up quite a lot. Now River is going to be getting involved with Cirque as well, though actually Plever is trying to get involved as well in this 4-way battle coming into Sector 2.
Yeah, and we've seen Plever, he's kind of just been chilling at the back of this little group, letting the other guys batter out and just try and relax and get into a rhythm, because obviously there's no need to take unnecessary risks at this point of the race. We're going to head back up actually, because it looks like Borja Milan on the inside of Georgi Nadev having a sniff of that line but not liking the smell, and diving back behind Nadev as they head through that first chicane. But if you look at that behind, Remco Major just 1.5 seconds away from Borja Milan. He is closing up that gap to the lead now for the Undercover Sim Racing team. 25 seconds it looks like, and he is going to be closing up. As we head along the back straight though, the slipstream could come in quite handy for Borja Milan, but it looks like he's just a little bit too far behind to make that work. And you can see ahead as well, it looked like Leon Bock and Andonovski having a little bit of a battle there as well, or no, that was a laps car even, with these guys trying to get past as well. But Borja Milan really putting the pressure on Georgi Nadev now. But it is going to be Remco Major who's going to come up and make things quite interesting. You can see the onboard in the top right there of him closing that gap and really catching up. And someone's on the grass, I think that's the lapped car, so he's just letting people through. He's let Remco Major through though, but this battle ahead is working dreams for him, because we actually have more of a battle. That was Riva and Sick, I think, side by side, but Alice Plever as well just at the back of this battle, just avoiding any unnecessary contact and just keeping with these guys, which he's doing quite a good job at.
Yeah, it certainly is, and there seems to be a few battles forming from some guys who maybe think is a bit of a sprint race. Some of these guys are really going for these overtakes, which is obviously quite good. It's just there's still obviously over 2 hours left in the race. Don't need to be too crazy with these overtakes, and some people are trying really hard, and maybe we'll see another one here. Andonovski overtook Nadev a couple of laps ago, and now he's trying to get on the back of Leon Bock. And we all know Andonovski was quick enough for 2nd place, and he's going to be so determined now, because he'll be quite cross with himself, because there was a driver error coming into the penultimate corner that cost him the spin. That has now put him down in this position. And the Callaway Corvette is obviously quite a decent car as well, so he'll definitely feel he'll be able to get past those guys. But someone else who needs to get past the guys in front of him is Remco Major, who's now on the back of Borja Milan. He's worked his way up now into 8th place, and certainly the top 5 is looming for this car, who was obviously hindered with a penalty from Portland. Now to come out towards the final corner, we need to see how many laps it's going to take him before he can make an overtake.
Yeah, definitely, and with the current pace he's got, we've seen that he's quick, but we've also seen that these guys, Georgi Nadev and Borja Milan, they're not going to be easy to overtake, and Timotej Andonovski is going to demonstrate that now, because he's going to stay behind Leon Bock, who runs slightly deep, but he is just maintaining at that apex, which just makes it impossible to try and find a way through, because there really is only one line through these high-speed sections. Otherwise, you're just going to scrub off an awful lot of speed and not really be able to challenge. But it will be interesting to see how long it takes Remco Major to try and squeeze his way through both Borja Milan and Georgi Nadev. But Andonovski now really close, couldn't get closer to the rear diffuser of Leon Bock down the inside there. You can see the flames spitting out of the side exhaust of that Callaway Corvette, and it's going to be P4, and he's going to run away as soon as possible. That gap of a second now, and just trying to extend it and keep himself safe so he can defend that position he has only just taken with a fantastic move there. Just managed to carry the speed through that chicane onto the straight and use the slipstream to its fullest advantage, and now he is just pulling away as fast as possible. So it'll be interesting to see now whether these guys behind, Borja Milan, Georgi Nadev, can they catch up to Leon Bock, and is Leon Bock able to keep up with Timotej Andonovski as well, because these are of course different speeds that the drivers are going, but they are all battling for that coveted P4 position just outside the podium though. And you can see on the left there's quite a big gap actually to Mathieu de Croo in P3, but it's going to be Remco Major and Borja Milan who we're now going to watch, because this battle is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, this is going to get feisty, I think. Borja has been sitting behind these guys for 20-30 minutes now, and all of a sudden he's got this really fast car behind him, and he's going to be thinking, oh, what can I do? But sometimes the best way of defending is by attacking, and that is what he's going to have to do. He's going to have to try and get past Nadev like the other couple of cars ahead of him did of Andonovski and Bock, because otherwise not only is he going to be losing time to them, but also he's going to be under threat from a big dive from Remco. As soon as he sees position, he's going to want to do that. So he needs to make sure that he's putting all the pressure he can on Nadev in front. And as we're seeing on that top right corner, Mathieu de Croo coming around into Sector 3 for One Move Esports. We haven't really talked about them so far this race in terms of seeing them on the track. They've had quite a quiet race so far. But if they're not careful, these guys over the course of the next hour or so are going to be catching up. So the cop needs to make sure he's not making any mistakes, because I think he could be involved in this battle at some point in the future.
Yeah, most definitely, because that gap was 4.5 seconds now. It could quite easily close up, especially if these battles sort of spread out a little bit and allow everyone to go at a normal speed, because of course battling does slow you down. What's interesting right now is that actually Remco Major having quite a lunge there. He's going to get very close to the back of Borja Milan, but Borja does just place it on the apex and block that move. But what is interesting is that Mika Hakkinen is still 7.5 seconds behind Michi Hoyer, the lead car. So it looks like only the number 30 Nita Velix McLaren could be in any position of challenging the number 49 Burst Esports Callaway Corvette. So that's going to be interesting. I say that gap's now 8.5 seconds. So Michi Hoyer maybe just being a little bit comfortable. We've got Rory McDuff now on the back of Roman Prickerel. This is for 18th position. Can the McLaren get it down the inside? He's going to be just about ahead through the braking zone. It could be the advantage to Roman Prickerel. No, it's not. He just isn't able to carry enough speed, and he's going to have to concede that position to the Cetres Nita Velux McLaren. And Remco Major now down the inside of Borja Milan. The action just doesn't stop on track. Borja Milan slightly on the grass. That's going to cost him a little bit of time, but that does mean the beefy Bentley is up into 7th place, with Georgi Nadev now having to look behind him as we are right now, because that very intimidating undercover sim racing car is on a charge up the field. He is looking for that position so that he can continue closing up, having had that penalty carried over from the last race. He was down in P12, he's up in P7, and P6 is just 0.6 of a second away from him.
That was a feisty move by Remco Major. Left Milan no space on the exit. He was not playing around. And now, as you say, he's trying to get Nadev, and they've left Milan actually a little bit in the dust. So this battle is now going to move on to 6th place for Remco Major, only half a second behind Nadev now. And what he needs to do is line up a nice overtake. But it definitely seems that it's the more straight line speed where that Bentley is looking good. And I remember there was from the BOP, it did actually get a power increase, I believe, as part of that as well, which is obviously helping them here. And it's looking quite good. But how will it be over the course of 3 hours? That is what we're going to find out, as we're going to see a replay here. Remco Major, he's going to come down the inside there, just about leave Milan enough space not to crash, but also not enough that it's going to be a nice, easy defending down onto the start-finish straight. But this lap around, he's got so close to Nedev out of that final corner, and he's going to be getting down the inside here. This looks like it's going to be a fairly clean overtake for the Bentley as it just creeps up the inside into turn number 1. And does he have enough on the brakes? Yes, he just about does. So that is 6th place for Remco Major. A nice couple of laps there, 2 positions, and as long as he can hold it here in Sector 1, that's going to be a nice P6 for Undercover Sim Racing.
Definitely. What's going to be interesting as well is how this balance of performance change affects next race as well, because of course that's a bit of a moment there for George and Nadev. This could give Borja Milan the position as well, actually. Yeah, they're going to be side by side along this back straight, and I think Borja Milan might finally get through as a result of a mistake by Nadev that was just a result of human error. But as I was saying just before, I think it's going to be interesting how this translates into Bathurst next time out, because it's very difficult to overtake in that top section, and with the speed and power of the Bentley, it might be able to defend along those straights as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how Bathurst plays out as well. But this is Radek Sik, who's actually gone deep onto the grass, not quite spinning like Giancarlo Costa earlier, but he's almost spun the BMW there as well. So that's cost him 2 positions that off, and you can see just how close some of these battles are. And I think that's also it's Matthew Fennell, sorry, in the Speedy Mike car. He's managed to get through up into that position. But we're going to head down to the Snow Shatton Esports car. Pedro Delgado at the wheel. He's got Michael Francesconi behind him with the Pescara ATP Alto Tyler BMW. Up ahead, they've got a bit of a big gap at the moment, but in front of that, it's even larger. Half a second between them now. It's going to be interesting to see whether this McLaren is able to hold off the BMW. Now, the McLaren isn't absolutely awful, as shown by P2, still Nita Velix, the number 30 car. So the BMW, actually, it'll be interesting to see what kind of challenge, where its strengths are, and how Pedro Delgado defends, because we've already seen a lot of action so far in these first 45 minutes. And I think that's about to continue now, because Michael Francesconi in P11, in that number 8 car, he is just going to be trying to find a way through, and he's on he's not in the BMW, sorry, he's in the Corvette, actually, is Radek Sik now, with Rory McDuff in front of him. This is the other Citroën Nita Velix car, currently in P17, not doing quite as well as their teammate, but you can see just onto the back straight how much of that curb they use and just how much they bounce over as well because of the ride height and the stiff suspension of these GT3 cars. But it looks like, yeah, up ahead now we've got Pedro Pimenta, who is going to have a challenge from behind as well. So this is Rory McDuff, who made an overtake, I think, on Radek Sik, who is in that pink Callaway Corvette. And down the inside, he went into turn 1 along the main straight. And it looks like he just about managed to pull through it, as you can see on the rear. What you need to do there is just hold the apex for the second part of that chicane to make moves like that work. Because if you go side by side, whoever's on the outside for the first part will have the inside for the second and defend. So it was always interesting to see how much speed they're able to carry through there and what kind of technique they use to pull off those moves into turn 1.
Yeah, you got to be very careful, as you mentioned, on these cars, especially this one coming out onto the back straight, and even the exit one as well. We did see, I think it was Marcel Chinchik in the VEC race 2 weeks ago, chasing down Burst Edge Esports in the final stages of the race, hit that curb, went for a little spin, and that was it. That was the chance for the overtake over. So that also translates over from those prototypes into the GT3s as well, as we've seen a couple of drivers. You see them absolutely sending it over the curb, but you do have to be very careful. There is a certain way of doing it, otherwise you're going to be going for a little bit of a spin. As we now see Pimenta having to defend a little bit now from Rory McDuff, who's also on the back of on the Speedy Mike cars, number 92, coming now through Sector 2. So McDuff, just like Major, is having a bit of a recovery drive, as they say, but he had 2 drive-through penalties, so he lost probably the best part of a minute, which is quite a long way, especially on a track so short as this. It's going to be most of the lap, but he just needs to make sure that he can get it set up through this final sector, and it should have at least a nice run down into turn number 1 if he can get nice and close, which he has done. So this could be a move for Roy McDuff, who has lost a tiny bit of speed in that mid or entry of the corner, but in the mid part he's gained so much, and now with the slipstream he's going to be having a look. Pimenta's feeling it. He's going for a little bit of a defend, but he's actually decided to stay on the racing line. No point defending this one because Roy McDuff has way more straight line speed, and I think actually he backed out of that one, letting the Cetra Zenith Velix through up into 16th place.
Yeah, that was just an awful lot of speed he was able to carry through there and just, yeah, shoot up into that position straight past the BMW. So the exit of these turns is really important. We have a brief yellow flag in Sector 3, but that's cleared almost as quickly as it arrived. But back down to Michael Francesconi, still staying at roughly the same distance behind Pedro Delgado in the Snow Shatton Esports car, the rebranded HM Engineering now in the McLaren. And yeah, you're just seeing that these cars are relatively equally matched because Francesconi, he's not able to get past, but he's not dropping back either. So it's going to be interesting to see how long this battle lasts and how it plays out. But what you are seeing is quite a conservative driving style because we're not even a third of the way through the race yet, and I fear that we're going to see something very different from Remco Berjour because he is on a charge up the field and he's looking for every other position. You can see completely different. He's going to be looking for a move at every available opportunity, unlike Francesconi, who's just settling in behind for now, maybe try and drive a mistake. But on the braking zone, you can see now Remco Berjour really closing up that gap now, just 3.5 tenths of a second. So he's already passed Timotej Andonovski in the Pinsim Drillers car, and he could actually be on his way to challenge Mathieu de Croo in the other Bentley currently on track. But Michi Hoyer is pulling away as well. He is now 10 seconds up from Mika Hakkinen, up in second position. But the speed of Remco Berjour seems to be unrivaled down the grid right now. Everyone but Michi Hoyer seems to be able to match him, and you can see now as they head through these sweeping sections, that front diffuser of the undercover sim racing Bentley just trying to get in every which way, and Leon Bock's going to take a defensive inside line into turn 1. But Remco Berjour going to pull to the outside. This could be very interesting. He's going to shoot past like an Exocet missile, but that's because he's broken way too late. He's onto the grass. That's going to cost him the position to Timotej Andonovski. He spins. Has Andonovski spun as well? It looks like he has. Yes, he has. He's blocking the racing line as that's Georgi Nadev just about getting away from that unscathed, but that is not what you want to see. And that was the aggression of Remco Berjour coming to the front. And unfortunately, he just missed his braking zone and he took away Andonovski, just innocent bystander, because you can see here, he was just heading it through that first chicane, pretty much unfazed, and he's gone because he's been hit in the rear, which is really unfortunate for the Pinsim Driller's car.
Actually, this was the replay. So that was how Andonovski got that far back in the first place. Because I was thinking, surely he must have made a mistake again. So this must have been a couple of laps ago before this, I believe. And then obviously in a moment we'll probably see the replay of then how that accident happened. But yeah, that was such an awkward situation for Remco. He rejoined the track at such an awkward angle. I would be very surprised if there isn't going to be a penalty coming for that, because it just obviously turned into effectively T-boning the Drillers car. Unfortunately, they managed to get out of the way of those couple of extra cars coming in, but certainly reversing across the track from Timo wasn't ideal either. Just gets a little bit confusing. So there could be a couple of penalties coming for that incident. It's not what you want to see, especially when there's over 2 hours left in a race, but they are fighting hard, and Remco obviously felt like it was obviously a good opportunity, or maybe just a little bit too much for this one. So let's see, he's going to go to the outside. Leon Box actually let him through. Leon Box completely backed out of that one, while Remco goes too wide. He's trying to keep it in, and yeah, just rejoins a tiny bit too quick, and obviously then the contact with Andonovski happens. But maybe Remco could have gone a bit more straight across the grass and come in sort of on the exit of turn 2 rather than on the apex. Obviously, it's a lot easier to say in hindsight. He was trying to stay on the track, but yeah, that obviously has turned into a bit of a bad situation. And the Driller's car has already gone into the pit lane. Maybe a little bit early, actually, with 2 hours 7 minutes left. Definitely going to have a 2 long or like full stints towards the end of the race from here.
Yeah, that is interesting. Maybe a bit of damage. Maybe they've just decided that now is the time to pit as a result of that incident. But you saw Borja Milan also had to go off track to avoid the incident. as those two cars span pretty much in tandem with each other. It looked quite interesting on the replay. It was almost synchronized there. But we are seeing now Michael Francesconi. He isn't quite so aggressive with Pedro Delgado, potentially because they've got a bit of a gap ahead to Tom Capusta that is currently about 5 or so seconds. But that does mean that Remco Major, having that incident added to his I think we've got a replay as well, but having that incident, yeah, you can see in the slow motion, he's cut across the grass and he's just come on almost perpendicular to the racing line. He has tried to avoid the Pinson Driller's car, but he just wasn't quite able to because of the awkward angle that he rejoined the track.
Yeah, the slow-mo makes it look like he had way more time than it looked, but yeah, my opinion would be that was not a great rejoin from him. But anyway, let's move on to Rory McDuff now, getting past Christian Riva in the Absolute Motorsports car. So this is another position for Rory McDuff. They were down in 23rd position at one point, maybe even a bit less. So they've done a lot of overtaking to get that number 60 back up into a respectable place. They're still 80 seconds off the lead, so they've lost a fair amount of time. They're going to be at risk of getting lapped. They're not too careful and don't keep up with the speed. But yeah, that is P13 for Rory McDuff, as Christian Riva once again has a bit of a bad exit out of turn number 6.
Yeah, and what's interesting now is that Remco Major, who was a potential challenger to Michi Hoyer and the Burst Esports car, he's now 40 seconds down the road from them as a result of that incident, which doesn't make it look like the unstoppable Burst Esports could be on course for yet another win in the SimRacing.Club GT3 Endurance Championship. And that is your race leader now heading around the track. He's got quite a lot of traffic to contend with, but he's got quite a bit of leeway as well. 10 seconds to Mika Hakkinen behind him. He's pretty comfortable. You can see that Bentley moving out of the way. I think that might be, I can't tell which Bentley that is, but just getting out of the way of the race leader as it should. And there's yellow flags in sector 1 and potentially 2 and 3 as well, but they're going to be gone as soon as they've arrived. And you can see up in the top right as well, Michael Francesconi, who's on a little bit of a battle still with Pedro, being very relaxed in that respect.
And I wonder how Michi Hoyer is feeling. He's obviously had quite a lonely race now since the penalty of Remco Major. That was obviously best part 50 minutes ago. So need to see what Burst are going to do as well, because obviously it's 3 hours, so one driver's going to do 2 and the other driver's going to do 1. So do they change in the first hour or do they change at the second pit stop? We'll have to see on how that one's going to work out. But obviously he's got this now over 10-second gap to Hakkinen. Hakkinen's doing a great job, solid job in second place, but he isn't quite quick enough to challenge Burst. And even then Matthew DeCrow behind has also dropped off a little bit, so these three are sort of spreading out. So these guys need to find a way of obviously keeping themselves motivated to keep going, and that's why maybe I was thinking a driver swap at an earlier point could maybe help that. We'll have to see what the teams decide and obviously how they're going to play with the strategy as well.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting as we have now reached the 1 hour in, 2 hours to go, and it's going to be Michi Hoyer in the lead with 40 laps, followed by Mika Hakkinen and the Ceterazanita Velux car, then Mathieu de Croo with One Move Esports and the Bentley, Leon Bock and Evolution Motorsports, followed by the Monaco BMW, then Go Team Racing, Undercover Sim Racing, Tom Capusta and Revo Satellite Racing in 8th, with Snow Shatton Esports in their debut under the new banner in position 9, and then Michael Francesconi in P10. Then we've got Osasuya Munwen with the Speedy Mike car, now a lap down in P11, Alice Babel with Core Team in P12, Rory McDuff and Ceterazanita Velix now in P13, having climbed up the order a fair bit. Then Absolute Motorsports in 14th with Speedy Mike Racing, the second car in 15th, then ProSim Tech 16, then both core teams, Radek Sick, and then Raymond Prickroll in 17th and 18th, then Jeffrey Ellis with Joy Racing in 19th, then Fernando Carato and Push Rod Racing in P20. Then P21, we have Giancarlo Costa with the Omicron Sim Racing Aston Martin, who we saw had a spin earlier, followed by the Trojan Donuts automotive car, having climbed up a fair bit after qualifying. Then James Zuber in the Pinsim Drillers esports car, not quite as high as Timotej Andonovski in the sister Pinsim Drillers car. Then Flying Goat in the Soul Mercedes, currently P24. Then the Pro Sim Tech BMW driven by Daniel Silva in 25th. Volante Racing with Bart Slobozhin at the wheel, 26th. Then the third and final Speedy Mike Racing car in 27th. Then Blackbird Sim Racing in 28th. And then the DNS of Andre Muscala, actually, who've actually rejoined. But then we've got the Caspian Motorsport car DNF in P30. So quite an interesting point to have a look actually at all of the order. And it looks like actually P16, 17 and 18, all of the core teams are now united on track, but Georgi Nadev now having to defend very hard from Remco Major, who is really putting on the pressure, and you can see him almost touching the diffuser for not the first time this evening. We've seen from many of the onboards looking rear, just some really close racing by Remco Major and his undercover Sim Racing Bentley. He's going to have a look at the inside line into turn 1. Under braking, he's going to be equally matched, but can he carry it through and hold that apex for the second part? Yes, he can. Georgi Nadev is going to try and carry a bit more speed through the second part, but it just isn't enough as there's nowhere to get through in this next part of the track.
Yeah, certainly, indeed. So Remco's going to have to try and make these positions back up again. I do wonder, though, if he'll have any damage from obviously the contact, which could hamper his speed just a little bit as we go into the final 2 hours of this race. So we are now in the middle hour of the 3 here at Indianapolis. And now we're going to get to the point where drivers are going to start thinking about their pit stops. The GT3 cars go generally just about an hour or a little bit longer. And it seems Pedro Delgado is one of the first there to come in, along with Absolute Motorsport just behind them as well. Christian River there in 20th position now, and they will obviously lose a fair amount of time. Best part of a lap it will be for doing a full pit stop, and then we need to see who is going to double stint tyres, if at all, or are they going to go for single stints as now. Pimenta gets down the inside of Matthew Fennell down to turn number 7. Can he do on the brakes? No, not quite enough, so Matthew's going to hold on there for 12th place in the number 92.
Now, what's interesting is Michi Hoyer has requested a pit stop, but he'll be coming in at the end of the lap. And we've got Tom Capus as well entering the pits too. So Pedro Pimenta, though, it is interesting. He's really quite close behind Matthew Fennell in that Porsche. But with these pit stops, it could be an idea, if you've been stuck behind the car for quite a while, to come into the pits, try and get an undercut, and then blast round for your out lap. Maybe the lap afterwards, just try and jump the other person in the pits, as we do see a Speedy Mike car. I don't know which one that is, but it's entering the pits as well. So we've got quite a few cars now entering the pits, having their stops, changing tyres potentially, but also taking on board a bit more fuel. But Matthew Fennell holding the inside line to try and defend Pedro Pimenta, and it looks like he's just about held on to it. We've got Riva ahead as well in the Corvette, so we've got quite a close battle emerging at the moment.
He joined the wrong part of the track, did River. He, from the pit exit, you're supposed to stay on the right hand side of the apex curve of turn number 1, as we saw with Remco Major earlier on when we were on board with him on pit exit. You're supposed to stay to the inside of the curve. There's a little white line, you go slightly over the grass, whereas he just came all the way out, which was potentially a little bit dangerous actually, with these guys fighting. As now Pimenta getting very close as we get towards turn 7 once again, but he's not going to be able to get past on this time round. But yeah, that was a little bit awkward from River. The old layout did used to have the pit exit there out into turn number 1, but on the layout we're using at the moment, you do need to stay to the inside. So I do wonder if that will ever come to anything, but fortunately no accident came from that. And we'll have to see if Pimenta can once again get towards the back of Matthew Fennell, coming through this very crucial Sector 3. It's an awkward couple of little turns, but they're very, very crucial in terms of the overtaking on the track, because this is the longest straight down into turn number 1. And this final corner especially, maybe just not quite flat out in dirty air as well. Having said that, it looks like it's too far away as we see Pushrod now come into the pit lane.
Yeah, so we are really seeing the pit stages in full, and this is a car we haven't seen at all really this evening. It's the Flying Goat number 95, the only Mercedes we have in this championship. And he's got Daniel Silver behind him in the other Pro SimTech BMW P22 right now, holding on to P21. We've got Thomas Jacobs ahead. He's a bit of a way down the road though, and we've got Susuya Minwen and Roy McDuff as well. That's a battle that we didn't see coming, and down the inside into the hairpin almost, and he's managed to get that position with quite the dive.
Yeah, Trojan Automotive, they obviously run out of fuel or something. Being slow on the back straight as well. So all sorts happening here as we get towards this pit stop phase. It's obviously going to be quite a lot of changing of the running order over the next couple of laps, as we have a yellow in sector 2, although that has been cleared now. As cars will now start to work out what they can do as we get a yellow in sector 2 again, and we've already got lapping traffic up until P13. So that is just how quick Midge Hoyer has been, as this yellow is going off and on in sector 2. So I do wonder if that is for someone having a bit of difficulty. Maybe that Trojan car. Let's see if that one works its way out. And yes, it is there. Grabenk is in the car, sat on the grass in between the fast chicane of 8 and 9. And he was going so slow. I do wonder if there's maybe a fuel issue or something like that. Yeah, a little bit awkward to see, but we will now jump on board with the Flying Goat. We've got Anthony Maris in the car there, defending from Daniel Silver for Pro SimTech, the number 29. And this is getting very close with the number 95 as we come out of turn number 10 over turn number 11. But it seems like no overtake's going to happen just there.
No, and it looks like Pedro Pimenta in P12 is about to go a lap down as well. But that was definitely very close from Daniel Silver, as it looks like Anthony Maras going slightly too deep there. It's just going to be the exit from these turns, just trying to maximize those speeds along the straight, because that's the only real opportunity to actually make moves around this track, is just into the heavy braking zones, which Daniel Silver is going to attempt into turn 1. We've got yellow flags in sector 3. That could still be from the stranded Trojan Donut Automotive, but Daniel Silver down the inside now. Can he get past Anthony Maras in the braking zone? They're still going to be side by side, almost contact, and I think Anthony Maras is going to have to concede that position to the Pro SimTech BMW and just back off a little bit. We have still got yellow flags though, so yeah, some calamity there for Trojan Donut Automotive, but you can see already Daniel Silver's pulling away quite quickly, and into the pits you can see in the top right even more drivers. And looking as well, it looks like Mathieu de Croo and Leon Bock have also requested pit stops as well, so they'll be pitting imminently. And that is Pedro Pimenta, I think, in the pits. Yes, it is, in his Pro SimTech car. We've got Mathieu de Croo now entering the pits as well. So it'll be interesting to see where he comes out in relation to Michi Hoyer, because, of course, he is posing a slight challenge now, 40 seconds down the road, though. We've got James Juba in the Pinsim Drillers Corvette going down the inside of Giancarlo Costa in his Omicron Sim Racing Aston Martin, getting that done quite well, because once you get past and ahead through turn 1, that exit through turn 2 just means that you can extend that gap and hold the position well.
And we've just been hearing from the race director that the car who cannot resume will have to DNF, and I do believe, number 61 is Trojan Donut Automotive, so they've obviously sat there wondering what they can do, but unfortunately there isn't really much you can do in that situation. There's no tow service or anything like that. If you run out of fuel, if you break your engine, etc., you are stuck there out on the track and you will have to press escape. And in R-Factor 2, once you press escape, that is it. You are out of the race. So that unfortunately for them is going to be the end of the race. And yeah, just interesting that the race director, Sean Jacobs, had to come on, because for the most part, these guys have been pretty well behaved in the opening half of the season of the GT3 Endurance Season 1, as we now have Remco Major coming in after 1 hour and 8 minutes. So these guys on this track are going actually a little bit further than what we've seen in some other venues as well. It seems that there's quite a few drivers in there, but Michi Hoyer and Happinen are still out, as well as Evolution Motorsports' Leon Bock as well. We need to keep an eye out for some driver swaps also as we get towards this first round of pit stops.
Yeah, now with Michi Hoyer, he requested a pit stop quite a while ago, so it'll be interesting to see when he pulls into the pits at last, because he seems to be staying out a little bit longer than everyone else. Also, number 30, Mika Happinen, he's requested a pit stop, so he'll be coming in soon. And now we see the race leader enter the pit lane. Will he be the one staying in the car though, or will he be replaced by his teammate? We'll have to see, because you can see they carry as much speed as possible on that pit lane entrance, because it is of course still part of the racetrack. They only have to be slow in the pit lane proper itself, and you can see that coming into effect now with the drivers just really almost on the limit through there, which is a bit risky considering the proximity of the walls. But into the stop he comes, and it'll be interesting now to see if it is Michi Hoyer who will take it through to the second pit stop as well, or if he will be replaced.
Yeah, it does look like the cars have jumped up in the air. There's almost a collision there between Happinen and Major. That was getting a little bit close on pit exit, but it seems like they were all good. But yeah, all the batting now with Wanako. Actually, Remco Major's gonna have to give this one up, and as you see, they have to keep to the inside of this apex. There is a little white line, which is what River didn't do a few laps ago, and James Zuber has come out behind these guys as well. So they actually took that. Driller took their pit stop immediately after the accident. They must have had some damage, which is where Andonossi got out of the car to swap for Zuber as well. But Major now behind Nico Barkley, gonna have to get the slipstream and see what he can do, as now Evolution are in the pit lane as well. And what I was trying to say is they're all up on the jack, so they are changing tyres, and they are not going to go for any sort of double stinting. And they obviously think that is the quickest way to go. But now, what can Major do? We know how fast he is, how fast his car is, and it looks like he's all over the back of the Wanako car of now Nico Barkley. So they've done a swap there in the Wanako car. So Nico Barkley's coming straight on the track, straight into a battle, and this could be a bit awkward. There's always going to be a bit of contact there, and somehow Barkley manages to save that. But Zuber's getting on the back of this as well. So this is going to get a little bit feisty, I think, once again.
Yeah, and you can see Remco Major still very, very aggressive, trying to get his nose in just a little bit too much there, tapping the rear of Nico Barkley. Now, if I was him, I'd be trying to avoid any unnecessary risks, because we've already seen earlier with that incident with Tinete and Andonossi, as we once again see the Borja Milan, Nico Barkley, sorry, who's replaced Borja Milan, just holding on to the inside line, really trying to stop there being any room for Remco Major to try and get through. And that's going to be interesting as well, because we've seen how much the Major is pushing these other cars, and is it very wise to just try and stick yourself in the way all of the time? And that's what's going to be interesting, because we're going to see now into the braking zone, to the inside moves Remco Major, under braking. Can he hold it? Yes, he can. He's going to force them wide. No, he's not. He's going to force Barkley onto the grass, and Barkley,
something's happened. I don't know what's happened there.
I think he might have blown his engine potentially, and this could be yet more disaster for the Wanako car. Remember, that was the car that was crashed into the pit lane entrance. So we'll see a replay, and now of actually the pit exit as well, because we saw these guys side by side, and that was the close incident with the Citroën Nita Velix car. But you can see Barkley got released just ahead, and on the exit, Major had a go at fighting him, but he just returned to position, because it's always a little bit risky there. But I do think that that's going to be the Wanako car out of the race, and you can see the red DNF there, and that is just more disaster for a team that is fast, and they've proven their speed.
Remco Major's now has just got past Evolution Motorsports. That is Pascal Schmidt, who's now in the car. He's just got in, so it seems that some of these teams have swapped in the first pit stop, but Major is kept in the car. He's fresh, he knows the track, he doesn't need to get up to speed, he's already in the zone, and he's made a couple of moves already. Unfortunately, Nico Barkley there seemingly blowing his engine or something to that extent, and now getting past Pascal Schmidt as well. So that was a good decision to keep Remco in at that first pit stop, and it's made him get another 2 positions there, as obviously he's recovering a little bit once again from that spin with Andonovski earlier.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that the idea of keeping Madurin is that he's proven that he is currently I would say the second fastest car on track. This is going to be the onboard. And now you look, yeah, it looks like he's just over revved the engine trying to downshift too much. He's actually had a bit of a collision there with Remco Major, who just went slightly too deep. You can just see on the reds there, he downshifted a little bit too much. And that's going to be him out of the race, which is just really unfortunate because they had a similar issue at the Nürburgring where they did make it to the end. They had it last time out at Portland where they hit the barrier dividing the pit entrance and the actual track itself. And once again, their engine is going to break and they're not going to see the checkered flag this evening. They didn't even manage to make it past halfway, which is just very unfortunate for the team. And they're also incredibly frustrating for Borja Milan and Nico Barkley.
Yeah, they have not had the season. They have not had the season that they wanted at all. They are probably good enough to at least challenge for the top 5 over the course of the 8-race season, but they've really struggled. And Burst Esports have just been so good so far. They've now got a 34-second lead, which is quite remarkable over Happinen. And that is 34. I meant 39-second lead over Happinen. So that is looking very good for them and very comfortable for them as we approach the halfway point in the race. As we now go on board with McGowan, and he's behind Crespi, who's also behind Joy Racing. Not sure who's in the car at the moment. This looks like going to be a three-way battle. McGowan's gone for an absolute send around the outside. Can he get both of them? At least he's got the Joy Racing Bentley, who seems to have maybe a couple of issues there going into turn number 1, and also the Pro Simtech car of Routinho behind them is also getting past as well as Serato. So what's that? 4 positions lost for Joy Racing, as they obviously had a bit of an issue there. Maybe slightly too early on the braking. McGowan tried to get both cars, but only got one in the end. And let's see a replay of firstly, Remco Bior getting past Leon Bock there. Pascal Schmidt there in turn number 1 and 2. And then obviously, potentially in the moment, we'll see that move of McGowan, but that was quite a send there from him, and he managed to get at least one place, but not the best couple of corners for Joy Racing.
Yeah, and there you can see Michi Hoyer now with a 1:22.7. So those fresh tyres and more fuel in the car. He has just got buckets of pace. I mean, he's 40 seconds clear of Christian Michel in P2. It's just preposterous the amount of pace Burst Esports have. I mean, they're just running away with this championship at the moment, and no one can catch them. But around the grid, though, we are seeing some more. Maybe this would be quite a different situation, actually, if the Undercover Sim Racing team didn't have a drive-through penalty carried over from last race. Maybe we'd see a very different current standings with a potential challenge. But even then, I just think that Hoyer and his Corvette are just an unbeatable duo at the moment, and just Burst Esports in general. They're ridiculously quick. And we're now seeing James Juba, actually, as we have a replay of Christopher Whitehouse. So this is that Bentley who kind of just ended up with a Speedy White Porsche on his outside and a car on his inside. So I think contact was unavoidable there for him. He was really quite squeezed, but that did cost him 2 or even 3 positions in just one turn.
Yeah, so that was not the best situation for them. That's maybe McGowan actually turned in ever so slightly into him in turn number 1, but there's so many cars in the way there. It's always quite hard to judge exactly. As all Pallison coming quite heavy on the brakes there. They've obviously done a driver swap as well. Very interesting, actually, that a lot of these cars this race have gone for the driver swap in the first pit stop. In previous races, we've often seen it being in the second pit stop. And I do believe there's at least a couple of seconds time loss from the driver swap as well at the pit stop. It's only a couple of seconds, I believe, that you lose. So obviously, when you lose that time in which pit stop could actually be quite important with a battle out on track. If you try and do overcut, undercut, that sort of stuff. Let's see how this one goes as we come onto the start-finish straight now for Zuber on the back of Schmidt. So it does seem that Schmidt maybe not quite on the same speed as Leon Bock, so hopefully they don't lose too much time, because Evolution were looking pretty good there in that first hour or so of the race. Well, obviously, this is why it is a team game, but he goes too wide there. Zuba's going to get held up a little bit, so Pallison now is going to have a bit of an opportunity to think about this as well. But Zuba going to send it down the inside of turn number 4. That scared Schmidt a little bit. He's gone wide, but now side by side in turn 5 and 6, you do not want to do at all, and that's going to slow both of them down. So now Pallison can think about a send on both of these cars if he does this correctly, coming down towards turn number 7. Zuba's now going to go to the inside. Maybe Schmidt could have defended that a little bit more, but Zuba's got his car there. Can he do it on the brakes on the inside? But no, Schmidt now good on the brakes round the outside. And we now have the inside for turn number 8. But Zuba, once again, is going to keep it there. There's going to be a tiny bit of contact thing as we get now to the apex of turn number 10. And these guys are having such an awesome battle here through sector number 1 and 2. But now to the outside, Zuba goes. That's going to be a very difficult position because he's just going to be run off the track if he is not too careful, like we saw with Nico Barkley earlier on. But they're going to keep going side by side, and yes, he does get pushed off a little bit, so now Pallison gets past him, and Zuba unfortunately there is going to drop a position, but that wasn't the absolute best bit of racecraft. However, now Pallison could potentially get Schmidt as well as we come onto the start-finish straight.
And you also see off there Christopher Whitehouse serving the penalty he's just been given. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Pallison can do against Schmidt, who has replaced Leon Bock, because he's going to have a look down the inside. Under braking, he just hasn't got that room. Equally matched with the left feet, there just wasn't the opportunity to squeeze his way through. But James Zuba in the comparatively small Corvette still is going to be posing a threat to both of these drivers, and they're going to have to avoid making a mistake and actually kind of in a way work together so that they don't lose too much time and both get past. So that's the element that Zuba is bringing along right now, having made that mistake just a moment ago and been forced off the track and cost himself that position to Pallison. But it'll be interesting to see whether Pallison in the Go Team racing car is able to try and squeeze his way past the Evolution Motorsport BMW driven by Pascal Schmidt, because you can see right now James Zuba is actually dropping back a little bit, half a second now, maybe just trying to give himself a little bit of breathing room, but because he has closed up quite quickly again. But yeah, Pascal Schmidt just trying to defend from someone in the same chassis, which is potentially easier because it means you have that neutralizing factor, which makes it just that little bit more difficult to try and have an advantage on a different part of the track to the driver in front if you're Pallison trying to find your way through. But yeah, right now, Pascal Schmidt is holding away Christian Pallison from that position. And James Zuba is just going to sit tight behind, actually, and try and vulture those positions that he can, just squeeze in and squeeze through where mistakes are made. And in fact, it looks like Pascal Schmidt just about holding off Christian Pallison there. He looked like he was slightly wide, but he held him off still and is in 5th position. You can see James Zuba, he's not quite as quick through those staking sectors, it doesn't seem, as those two BMWs.
Indeed, and this battle is going to get very, very tense as we get towards this next part. As we see this nice overhead camera of the cars coming through this sweeping section of corners, these 3 sort of really flowing corners, 90-degree corners that comes into almost this sort of triple chicane kind of situation. Makes for some very good driving, as we saw with Zuba and Schmidt earlier. But now it's Pallison's turn to see if he can get on the back of Schmidt. Schmidt's obviously not quite up to speed now as the other drivers, has been defensive all throughout his stint so far. So much so that Major is actually now 13 seconds up the road. So he's looking very fast indeed, potentially catching down to De Croo. We'll have to keep an eye on that one. But Pallison, can he get close enough to Schmidt, or is Zuba going to get close enough to him? Bit of a sandwich moment for him, but he's certainly looking very quick, and Schmidt maybe not quite on the pace yet, so this could be his best opportunity. His next few laps is once again Schmidt goes very wide, so Pallison round the outside. That could be a bit of contact as Schmidt tries to go on the gas too early, and he's now let Zuba through as he had a bit of a wiggly moment there. So Zuba and Pallison through on Schmidt. Evolution down to 7th place, and that's a bit of a disappointment for the Evolution Motorsports team, as they had such good opening to the race, but now they will have to regroup and see if they can get back with these 2 teams, because otherwise they're going to be starting to lose a bit of time if they start to pull away.
Yeah, and you can see that. That's what I was talking about there with James Zuber just squeezing through when that opportunity arises from the battle in front. But we're going to go down to Crespi now, who's got a bit of a handful behind him. Currently in P14, he's going to be holding off quite a few cars right now. He's got Marcus Moutinho in the BMW behind him, followed quite quickly by Fernando Carato. So that ProSim Tech car really like just at the in P16, just maybe try to sweep up those positions from the battle that is about to occur in front of him, because it's still quite close. In fact, behind him as well, we've got quite a close battle as well. But the Absolute Motorsport car in the middle of this with Moutinho at the wheel is going to just be trying to find a way past Andrea Crespi, who on the other hand is going to be trying to block any way past possible as they head onto the straights now. There, it's going to be interesting to see which car has the pace. Of course, the car in 15 does have the slipstream advantage, but I do think the Corvette might be slightly quicker than the BMW in the straights this evening, and that's just going to give him a bit of an advantage. And it is also very difficult to overtake through the sweeping sections of this track, which means that Crespi does have an advantage when it comes to defending.
Yeah, certainly. It's looking fairly possible to defend, because obviously, especially if you get that exit out of the final corner. Oh, that's a huge send down the inside there, though he's backed out of it for Cerato there. That was almost a bit of a send. That could have put off actually Moutinho just enough to not make an overtake. But actually first, let's see this replay of Zuber coming here into turn number 1 and 2, and you're going to see he's going to be able to get past Schmidt as well. Schmidt goes for a little bit of a slide there. Zuber gets the overspeed, gets his track position there on the inside, and that's going to be a nice overtake, as we saw a couple of laps ago. Unfortunate moment for Schmidt, but obviously maybe just struggling a little bit with those brakes into turn 1, because he did do that a couple of times.
Yeah, and he came very close to James Zuber in that moment there. But this is the race leader, Michi Hoyer, 47.4 seconds clear of P2, just leading the race by half a lap almost at this point. It just, I don't know, by more than half a lap, I think. No, I don't know. No, it is more than half a lap. My maths is clearly not up to par. But yeah, that Burst Esports car quite comfortably out at the front. And it looks like they're going to be able to maintain this lead as we approach the halfway mark through this 3 hours of Indianapolis. But we are going to have to look at straight back to Andrea Crespi with the Absolute Motorsports Callaway Corvette. With that straight line speed, he just is able to pull away a little bit from Marcus Moutinho and not allow those opportunities for overtaking to happen, because whilst Marcus Moutinho in the BMW might be quicker through the sweeping sections, and therefore quicker throughout the whole lap, that is just not where you're able to make the overtakes. You can see right now, he isn't really able to close up to Andrea Crespi. It's pretty much staying stagnant as they head along this main straight, maybe closing down by a couple hundredths of a second, whereas behind we've got Fernando. Oh no, he's going to go for it, and he's going to go straight across the sausage curb, and that is what happens when you try and send it down the inside a little bit too hard at turn 1. Hopefully he can rejoin quite safely. He won't be on the racing line as he goes back onto the track, and that is quite far down the order he's fallen now, all the way to P18.
That was what you call a send over that curb into turn number 1. I said it a while ago. You don't want to be touching those inside curbs. Even this corner here, turn 7, you can see they're just raised up so much now. 1 out onto the back straight, the car really jumps over it, and if you mess it up and literally fly over it, that can be a big issue. So yeah, that's going to be a little bit awkward, as now we got Ludovic Ferru coming through the traffic now, but he's got Remco Major all over the back of him. And once again, this is a team that swapped drivers in that first pit stop, when Remco, not only is he looking fairly quick here today, but he's, oh, that's going to be a huge crash, and Remco Major is going to be able to get past. That is so unfortunate for Ferru. Just chose the wrong side of that crash, that spin in front of him. And that was an easy overtake. That was the easiest overtake Major is going to get today, and that puts him back up onto the podium like he was an hour and a half ago. So now he's going to have to try and chase down Nita Velux. But for now, Schramek here is going to try and get down the inside of Crespi. But that's going to be a little bit late on the brakes, but he's going to be able to do that just about if he's late enough, but not quite as we come into turn number 1 and 2. But he goes wide, so this can now give Serato the move there into P16.
Yeah, he just had that little bit of a slide, scrubbed off a little bit too much speed, the Tramac, and that just gave Karato the way through that he needed. But he has still got to get past Andrea Crespi, and they are closing up actually to Yuri Vishuzo right now. So that'll be interesting to see whether they have the pace. That gap 1.8 seconds. We've got yellow flags. I don't think it's anything major because they're going to go quite quickly. But look at this, Fernando Carato, he really is putting the pressure onto Andrea Crespi. He has got the pace to keep up, and you can see they're really pushing through this, the S's here, and onto this little straight. Under braking, he could try and get a move here. Or oh no, he's going onto the grass, and that's going to be a big spin there. He's just been a little bit too greedy with the curb. He's managed to avoid any major contact, but he's going to have to be careful because he's going straight onto the racing line on a straight. He's got clearance behind him though, but Giancarlo Costa as well going to get a penalty for his Omicron Sim Racing Aston Martin. But that was very scary indeed. And now we've got that battle, I think, for I can't remember what position that is, but we've got Tom Capusta now in the Revo Satellite Racing. He's got Thomas Jacobs now in the Snow Shatton Esports McLaren behind him. So whilst the Bentley is fast on the straight, he's going to have to defend quite hard from this McLaren if it can get a good exit with the slipstream that is probably quite high given the size of the Bentley, creating quite a big hole in the air for the other cars to follow. But I think just the absolute power of that beast is going to be able to keep him ahead for now. It's going to be through the S's which Thomas Jacobs is going to be able to close up and try and find that room, but only with the slipstream it looks like is he going to be able to try and make a move work. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this battle plays out between two very differently matched cars.
Indeed, and these guys have worked their way up in some fairly decent positions quite quietly. We haven't really spoken about either Revo Satellite or Snow Shatton too much as the race has progressed, but they've got themselves up into some nice points-paying positions of 7th and 8th place. So they need to make sure they are not ruining this like we've seen a couple of teams do so far, having a bit of a spin. And as you can see on that left-hand side, Michael Francesconi P10 already lapped, so only the top 9 cars are on the lead lap. And having said that, lots of them are by far and away off the lead. Michi Hoyer, Burst Esport, now 50 seconds in the lead. They have just done an awesome job on the not only the driving but also the strategy point of view as well. So we've got to see how that one works out over the course of the race as well. So got some high climbers here. We've got 2 Speedy Mike cars coming up 10 and 13 places respectively to each of those cars, which is the most around all of those. So maybe not the best qualifiers, but certainly getting some good positions in the race.
Yeah, I mean, their other car, P26, we're going absolutely great, but definitely for P12 and P13 right now. It's looking quite a strong finish for Speedy Mike. And of course, as you go up the order, you get more and more points by position. So, of course, finishing high up will be really good for the Speedy Mike guys. But and we're seeing here now, and that's a car off actually on the right there on the exit. That's yellow flags in sector 1, and I think that might be Andrea Rujo in the ProSimTech car. I'm gonna have to double check that though, because that is very interesting to see why he's just off of the track there.
Yeah, maybe he hit the curb on the far chicane. That's a bit of a weird one. You are right. Funny old place to have a spin, but I'm sure we'll try and find out who that is with maybe a replay in the near future, because that was quite a weird one, wasn't it? You don't really expect people to be having a bit of a spin around there. But as we see, Thomas Jacobs trying to get close, trying to get towards the back of fellow Tom, but Capusta in front of him for that 7th place. As one of the Speedy Mike cars is going to be getting out of the way under blue flags. Such is the way. The Speedy Mike cars only a couple of places behind, but a whole lap behind. Such is the way that the field has spread out over the first hour and a half, as we are now into the second half of this 3-hour race.
Oh yeah, it looks like David Mroczek isn't too confident in his pace compared to Michi Hoyer for when he next gets in the car. We're now seeing James Juba, so we're, I think, about to see a 3-way battle emerge here. Now, as James Juba closes up to these guys, and to Thomas Jacobs, with Tom Capusta in the the Revo Satellite car. But this battle definitely is going to become quite interesting, especially if they hold each other up. James Juba is going to have that opportunity to start closing the gap to Thomas Jacobs and maybe throw himself into the mix and try and navigate past both of them, because we've seen previously that when you've got two cars ahead battling, sometimes the best strategy is to just sit behind, and then maybe they'll have a moment where they go side by side, maybe lose a lot of time, and you can just slingshot your way between them or past them and take both of their positions through no fault of their own, just from them battling each other. So he could be in quite an advantageous position to maybe go for 7th place. Or if this gap extends a little bit too much, he might have to go past each one by one, which will be quite difficult for him.
Indeed, sometimes you can make use of the situation. You don't always have to get your overtakes done on the track or in a certain position, certain time frame. I saw with Remco Mior even a few laps ago. He just got gifted one of those positions just by being in the right place at the right time. So that can come as core team with Visluzel have got a penalty there. I would assume that is for track cuts, because that is a little bit of an issue around this track. There are a couple of places such as the exit of this corner, as we see a car there on the right hand side. That's one of the core cars coming back from the old section of the track. So another car there going for a bit of a spin, having some issues. So this race has certainly opened up to teams having a number of little incidents, because there's been too many to count so far.
Definitely, and I think what's happened there is that the car just probably clipped the inside maybe of one of their tyres on that curve, because we've seen how high it is and how you have to take it to be able to be competitive in terms of lap time, especially if you're carrying that speed onto the straight. But if you do it wrong, I think we just saw the outcome of that. It can spit you out in the complete wrong direction. Either you understeer or you completely oversteer, and that can be really bad. And I think that might have actually been Yuri Vishuzul who got spat off the track by it. But now we are still seeing Tom Kapusta holding off Thomas Jacobs, and I do think that might be as a result of the sheer power of the Bentley. He's just able to hold him off on the straights, and while Thomas Jacobs might be able to close up in the tight winding sections of the track, there isn't really an opportunity to pass at that point, and he just isn't able to stick with Tom Kapusta when they go along the straight. So right now, that Revo satellite car looks to be pretty steady in P7 for now. And whilst he has got the threat from Thomas Jacobs, he's had quite a mighty exit there onto the back straight. Up ahead, we've got a potentially laps car having a bit of a moment just on the exit.
Slowing down. Oh,
yeah. Oh, that is blue flags. That's the race leader, I think, just heading through there. And that's not exactly ideal, given the part of the track he's heading into now. He's had to give up time on that back straight, and it'll be interesting to see how the other cars react to it, because I think the gap now ahead to Thomas Jacobs is going to be quite interesting. We're riding on board James Juba now. No, with Thomas Jacobs rather. And you can see he's closed up actually really quite quickly to Tom Kapusta. He's also got James Juba up behind him. So this is going to be exit.
Oh.
It was Andre Crespi. I think this was a few laps ago.
Yeah, this was the first one. Ooh, be careful with that rejoin. Don't come straight out, because that is a very fast part of the track. And almost go for a second spin there. But yeah, it was actually the first curb, not the second one, interestingly. They just got the car all unsettled. Suspension popping off all over the place, and unfortunately he went for a little bit of spin. And now Michi Hoyer there trying to get through all this traffic. People are slowing down left, right and centre, and all these blue flags getting very confusing. There's people on many different laps here trying to let each other through. Now Michi Hoyer on the inside there of turn 5. That was going to be a little bit of an awkward one. Had to back out, so he's going to be losing some time here. Fortunately, he does have over a 50-second advantage, although there is some chat in the comments of what is going to be happening with this, but apparently Burst Esport have maybe done something slightly different with the strategy to maybe underfuel in this middle stint, which is what gave them such a big advantage. So I wouldn't be surprised if that comes down at the next pit stop, but we'll have to wait another 20 minutes or so to see. So definitely some strategy going on there, and that is one thing. Well, having a 3-hour race is still quite good, because it's long enough that strategy can gain you or lose you some time, and if anything, it's just keeping them out of the way a little bit of other cars. They're now by far and away in the lead, lapped all the way up to 7th place now, So Burst Esport definitely showing their speed as well as their strategy prowess.
Yeah, and some of these battles are still pretty close because we saw Jacobs actually get past Tom Capusta earlier, and now James Juba having a look at that inside line of the Bentley, and in fact, Tom Capusta having a little look at Thomas Jacobs as well. So this is really quite a close battle now for P7. 3 different cars, 3 different chassis as well, all battling for the 7th position because we've found ourselves at a point of the race where the traffic has become quite dense, and we're now going to see the Corvette actually against the Bentley as they head along the back straight now, getting very close with the slipstream to aid him. Juba is going to have a look down the inside. Under brakes, they contact there, upsetting the car a little bit. Are they going to run too wide in the exit? No, they're just about going to keep it on the tarmac, but that is going to be 8th place for James Juba. That was quite interesting. Fortunately, could have ended a lot worse. And now Tom Capusta is going to have to try and reclaim some of that time he's just lost. But also we have got a back marker just in front of Thomas Jacobs, which might be slightly slowing these guys up a little bit and having an impact on them, condensing them as well as they head onto the straight now. This could be quite interesting to see what effect this BMW in front of them has.
Yeah, this traffic's getting a little bit awkward in some of these situations, and obviously blue flags, you do have to, let the leaders through, and that could be a little bit awkward for Thomas Jacobs now, flashing away there. Even in the daylight, you could see that, and now it's going to be, he's just gone way too far into that corner, has the push rod, and that is actually the worst thing you can do. Don't do that at all. Someone else there has gone for a bit of spin, and a third car, Pro Simtech, were also off the track there. There's a third car involved, so all sorts going on here. But yeah, if you are ever having blue flags, do not just go deep in the braking zone like that. That is the worst place to do it. Just left off on the straight and let them through, or something along those lines, because that is very easy to put someone off, like it did with Thomas Jacobs there. Now Zuba is all on the back of him, coming down towards turn number 7. Zuba a bit later on the brakes, but not enough to make an overtake just yet. They're going to have to follow each other through as we come through sector 2 here. Jacobs doing a good job to hold on here in 7th place at the moment.
Yeah, well, the best thing to do when you're getting lapped is just to stick to your line, because as traffic, you just need to be as predictable as possible. And as you said, going deep can really upset the car trying to get past you. And it is always just best to do it safely rather than potentially quickly, because if you do that, you can be unpredictable and maybe cause a collision, because it looked like there was a bit of calamity at the start of this lap. And it'll be interesting to see maybe a replay of what happened there, because it did look a bit dramatic. But we still have James Juba on the back of Thomas Jacobs now. Tom Capusta, he's a little bit further back now from these guys. It's extended a little bit, that gap that was quite low just a moment ago. But just into the braking zone, James Juba, he wasn't quite close enough to try and make a move, but he's just got to stick behind the Snow Shattered Esports car and keep it close and mount on that pressure, because we have got traffic ahead. And in fact, we've got Schmidt as well, Pascal Schmidt in the Evolution BMW, that's in P6, 2 seconds up the road from Thomas Jacobs. And that's going to be interesting if they get to him. So that pace will be one to look out for, because we know the Evolution car is quick, but that's the Core Motorsports car just letting these guys through as they head into the heavy braking zone at the end of the back straight and into the S's, where these guys are relatively equally matched. That gap 0.6 of a second, but this is going to be a replay of what happened at turn 1. So you can see side by side on the exit. Yeah, we've seen a similar thing earlier in the race, and they're pretty much on the racing line, which is very risky. And someone else has gone deep into turn 1, and yeah, so that's going to have shaken up the order a little bit. Luckily, they all managed to get going again, though.
Yeah, that was Michi Hoyer coming through as well. That was very close to the team, the leader of the race, I should say, getting involved in an accident. There was also Evolution there, who are currently in 6th place. All sorts going on there. And just to note on that, 6th place for Evolution now, 1 lap down. That is pretty crazy. As we see here, Michi Hoyer getting past Schmidt. And then you're going to see here, fortunately, the Joy Racing car didn't roll backwards. If they had, Michi Hoyer would have had nowhere to go. And that is why we obviously have the rule to lock your brakes if you go into a spin, to make yourself predictable and not roll across the track. So fortunately, that happened. and Mitch Hoyer is still going. Still 53 seconds in the lead. Yeah, not a nice place. That turn 1-2 here at Indianapolis is a very tricky place. It's the main place for overtaking, and that's why we see a lot of incidents there. But also with that curb being so big on turn 1, it generally pushes you to be really tight in turn 2, and then obviously we get into those awkward situations like that. But now we're seeing Zuber on the back of Thomas Jacobs. Hasn't made his way through just yet, but he's definitely quicker. He just needs to find a way of getting through. He needs to find a gap and a way that he can get his Corvette past, because there is also that position of 6th place just up the road with Evolution in the distance as well. So this could be a good opportunity for James Zuber to get this Driller's car back up after obviously being spun out by Major earlier. Obviously, whether Major gets a penalty or not doesn't matter. This is still where they are in the race. Nothing's going to change that. And he's going to go for a bit of a send here down into turn 1. Massively late on the brakes. Bit of out of nowhere situation for him as he now goes side by side in turn number 2. Drivers love doing this. This section of track really promotes side by side racing. Now on the inside of turn 4, Zuber gets past, and then into 5 and 6, he's going to have the lead of that position into P7 for James Zuber, as long as he can hold on here down the back straight.
Yeah, that was quite an interesting move by James Zuber. Really sent it, but he managed to make it work, and that was quite close between the two of them. So he is quicker, and now he is ahead though. And it is whether he can pull away, because it looks like they still might be quite evenly matched for pace. And if this is the case, they might be able to work together to catch up to Pascal Schmidt, who we can see actually just a little bit ahead of these guys, maybe 2 seconds down the road from them. And that they are going to be both pushing, because we can already see James Zuber is beginning to extend the gap now, nearly 0.8 of a second to Thomas Jacobs, as Fernando Carato gets a penalty. And I'm sure that won't be the last drive-through we'll see this evening, possibly due to track cuts, because this track, it's quite easy to extend the limits in some places. We've seen how much the curbs like to get eaten by the drivers, and also the runoff in the areas where there's runoff can also make it quite tempting just to run that little bit extra off the track. But now we're seeing Fernando Carato now, who just has been given a penalty, who's quite close behind Lucas Stramek in the core team Callaway Corvette, battling for P17. However, every point will count at the end of this championship. There are only 8 races, the 8 opportunities to get points, which makes each one ever so much more valuable. And we can see now as they head through the S's, they are getting really quite close, but the pushrod car does have to serve a drive-through, and it might make sense to do it sooner rather than later so he doesn't get stuck behind Lucas Stramek.
Yeah, that would certainly be a good idea to serve the penalty. Obviously, if you have some sort of engineer, they'll be trying to look at where you might come out, but it's always a bit difficult to predict exactly. But you made an interesting point there. There's only 8 races in the season, and that could be quite a crucial one for the likes of Burst Esport. There's now been the prize revealed for this championship, which is basically €500 to the winning team, and that's obviously a nice prize for them. But obviously that's only for the winning team, so second place doesn't really matter. And for the teams like Williams Esport, who have neither of their 2 cars here today, that's really going to hinder them as well. And obviously with Evolution having a bit of a bad race, this could be an opportunity for Burst to get into a position where they could even win the championship a race early. But now Prodan on the inside of the Flying Goat, Priolu into sector 2, turn number 8 now. He's going to go round the outside into turn number 9, and that is going to be a bit of a slide there, but he manages to catch it, and that's going to be P20 for Donat Prodan, who has got his Volante Racing up into 20th place. A nice move there, and obviously not the position they potentially would have wanted, but at least another position for them as points do go down to 30th position.
Yeah, and it hasn't been an absolutely excellent race for the car that Donat Prodan is driving, but getting up the order, of course, is very good. But now we are seeing that James Zuber has caught up to Pascal Schmidt, and we saw that the Evolution Motorsports car is quick, but James Zuber has he's actually left the car he's just overtaken in the win. Thomas Jacobs now about 1.5 seconds behind, And that does go to show that Juba was quicker. And now that he's passed, he's really putting the pressure onto Pascal Schmidt, trying to get past the Evolution Motorsports car. And we can see someone else in the pits now. So with 1 hour and 12 minutes to go, that's Michi Hoyer actually in the pits. So we're talking about them maybe under fueling, which does explain that advantage they have. Here goes James Juba once again sending it in the inside into turn 1, and he's managed to pull that off. But yeah, we were talking earlier about how they're potentially under fueling the 49 car, which is the lead car, and that explains why they had maybe a 10 or 15 second extra advantage when they left the pit lane at that last pit stop phase. And that's going to be David Mrozek getting into the car, and they're going to have to fill it up again. And it'll be interesting to see whether they take a new set of tyres as well.
Yeah, that's going to be quite a long one if Mrozek's going to be going to the end of the race. An hour and 11, hour and 10 minutes by the time they leave the pit lane. That is on the longer slide, as you see. Oh, look at this drift from Pro down there. Manages to catch it, otherwise that would have been a bit awkward, spinning right in front of Priolu there for the Flying Goats. But now Michi Hoyer is going to be coming out of the pit lane very shortly. He's also going to be dropping down back into traffic, and this is how they got such a big gap in the first pit stop. Is because they did a tiny bit of underfueling, so that obviously they'd have track position then, rather than everyone else who is now probably going to go into the final hour. So they probably won't be pitting for another 10 or 15 minutes. So then they will then have their shorter pit stop at the end. So it's obviously just a battle of when you take that shorter pit stop. So we're now to see what Mrozek can do. Hour and 10.5 minutes to go. Should be doable. Maybe with a little bit of saving here and there. But can they make it work? This different strategy, we will find out. I think either way, their lead is going to be at least in the region of 20 seconds or so.
Yeah, it's because it's such an early pit stop, we're not going to be able to see for another 10 or maybe even 15 minutes what the true impact of that stop has been. Also, we've got the pace of David Mrozek as well in that car to see how that will have an impact as well. But we are going to go back down to Pascal Schmidt, who now has Thomas Jacobs, having just been passed by James Juba. The Snow Shatten car is really putting up a presence behind the Evolution Motorsports BMW. So it might not be the greatest few laps for that P7 car, because he's only just been passed, and the number 27 is potentially going to be passed again. It all depends on how well he can defend from that McLaren, which is going to be mounting quite a strong attack, I'd have thought. But James Juba as well, he's already running off down the road. He's about 2.5 seconds clear, nearly 3 seconds clear of Pascal Schmidt now, and he's got David Mrozek up the road, another 4 seconds from him. However, David Mrozek, of course, has just made a pit stop, which goes to show that these guys are still a pit stop behind the leader. However, it is going to be up to Pascal Schmidt, who's actually pulling away again from Thomas Jacobs. You can see that gap ebbing and flowing a little bit, up to a second for a moment there, but it might just be the different ways that these two chassis, the setups as well, affecting the way they take each turn individually. And we can see on the last lap they're pretty much even. In fact, that Thomas Jacobs was only 500ths, maybe 600ths of a second slower. So they are pretty much evenly matched around this track, and it's going to have to be a little bit more from Thomas Jacobs if he wants to find his way past the Evolution Motorsports car, because he's going to be defending hard like he did against James Juba, sorry.
Yeah, these battles are going to be getting quite tasty over the course of the next few laps. And this Snow Shatten team, however which way these battles work out, I think this is a much improved entry for whatever reason. It's the same drivers as when this was known as HM Engineering in the previous races, but for some reason they've had renewed performance here in Indianapolis. And either way, I think they're going to be fairly happy and comfortable with how it has gone so far. But this position for Schmidt, or to overtake Schmidt, would be very good for them indeed. As we now look at Christian Michel for Nita Velix, literally haven't talked about him at all so far. He's just been sitting there comfortably in second place, obviously now in the lead because Michi Hoyer has already made his pit stop. And these guys will have to make one in the next maybe 5 to 10 laps. But they're doing pretty good. They're sitting well in this number 30. leading Remco Major by 12 seconds. Having said that, that 12 seconds could easily come down over the next hour or so as Christopher Whitehouse for Joy Racing gets a penalty. But I wouldn't be surprised actually if you see Major close down that 12-13 second gap that they've got. He's definitely got the pace. He's managed to get back quite a lot already from that drive-through he had earlier on, and obviously the spin and then obviously after that. So we'll have to see. Major might be able to get himself a second place.
Yeah, well, the number 30 Nita Velix car, which we're seeing on our screens now, has been really comfortable in that second place. But yeah, Remco Major could be quite the threat, although that being said, he'll be getting out of the car quite soon and handing over to his teammate. So his aggressive, his push forward trying to gain those positions will come to an end quite quickly. But it'll be interesting to see what kind of pace his teammate will have in the car once he gets in, because of course Christian Michael, he hasn't been in the car the whole race, I don't believe, but he has done quite a good job, and a comfortable second is going to be a very good finish for the Cetres Nita Velux team, because whilst it's been a really uneventful race for them, that's essentially what you want, because they haven't had to take any risks, there haven't been any battles. But if they do come into a battle with that undercover sim racing Bentley, we've seen that it can be quite aggressive in trying to take those positions. That could be quite an interesting battle, especially for these high points, because that Bentley up until now not been the most competitive car, even having had a drive-through penalty though, and the spin with the Pinson Drillers car that was at the time driven by Timotej Andonovski. They are on their way back, and it'll be interesting to see how much of a recovery undercover sim racing can do. But we've also had Ludovic Ferroe as well, the One Move esports car. We haven't talked about it an awful lot. However, it's currently in P3, which will be a net P4, I think, once the pit stop phases are completed. But they've been sitting quite comfortable as well. They've been overtaken by the undercover sim racing team, and they're about 8 or so seconds away from them. But even so, it is showing it that Bentley to be a bit more competitive this round following the balance of performance changes.
Yeah, certainly indeed. And both versions of the Bentley. So this is the older version, the 2017, I believe it is. Remco Major is in the 2020 version. So there is the two different Bentleys in the game. There's also the two different Audis as well. I believe it's the 2018 and 2020 or 2019 Audi as well, but they are basically the same car, whereas this with the two Bentleys, they're actually different cars, different platforms. They drive a little bit differently and therefore have their own different balance of performances respectively. And supposedly the 2021's a little bit better, but either way that 2017 one has come strides as well, and it's good to see this One Move are going to be up there as well, because they've had quite a few issues over the last couple of years really. Especially with Mathieu Ducrot. He's had a lot of DNFs with his teammate Roy de Mook as well. They've had quite a lot of DNFs for various reasons. A lot of it is connection issues as well, often disconnecting from the race. So hopefully they can keep on to this really good position, as we now see David Mrochek getting past the Flying Goat. 5th position, but do not worry if you've just come back. They have made their pit stop already for their final pit stop, so Mrochek will be going to the end from here.
Yeah, and you can see that is the Flying Goat car number 95 that he's just passed. Currently in P20 with Jerome Priolo at the wheel. But yeah, we did have that interesting point with the pit stops, and that will be settled relatively soon. But this car number 95, it's been doing okay. I mean, the Mercedes hasn't been entirely competitive, and I think that is part of an explanation as to why there is only one of them fielded in this championship. But with their kind of best lap times, they've done a 1:25.2, and in comparison to the other guys, that does show that it's not quite as quick as many of the other guys on the track, most of them setting either 1:25.0s or mid 1:24s. But we are going to head back up to the battle now for P7, because we've got Pascal Schmidt still ahead of Thomas Jacobs. So these two seem to be quite evenly matched for pace, because that gap hasn't really gone down below half a second. It hasn't really gone over a second either. James Zuber is quite far down the road. He's passed them a while ago. That gap now 4.5-5 seconds. And he's got David Mrochek in front of him. But this battle here, a lot more evenly matched, and what that means is it's going to be a lot harder for the Snow Shatton McLaren to try and find his way past this BMW, because it was hard enough for James Zuber, who was much quicker, with two drivers on equal pace. So it's going to be an awful lot harder for that Snow Shatton car to get up into P7.
And also, we're now at this point in the stint where the tyres are going to be really dropping off a little bit. Obviously, we did mention before, the first pit stop, if anyone maybe try to double stint, but that is very unlikely, because the tyres do drop a fair amount over the course of the stint. And because of that, this is another reason why the Burst Esports strategy of pitting early. So not only did they have the saved time in the first pit stop because they didn't fill it all the way, but they also are now on newer tyres when everyone else is on old, like really old tyres. So they're gaining obviously the most that they can from that when their tyres are the best and the others are from the worst. So they're gaining a lot of time at the moment. Mojek, despite getting the car, is looking very good on the pace, and last lap was the quickest of anyone. So despite being down in 5th place, Burst Esports are still going very quickly. And someone who's trying to make up a position and go quickly as well is Francesconi. We haven't really spoken about this team too much this race so far. They have been a little bit off the pace. They're normally up with the other BMWs of Go Team Racing, Evolution, etc. But today they're a little bit off, down in 10th place. But this position with Capista in front of him might be an opportunity, as I think Capista may have just been coming into the pit lane. We'll see. But someone who is James Zuber. We'll have to see if anyone changes driver once again in the next round of pit stops, as Capista does come in for his pit stop with almost exactly 1 hour to go. So we are 2/3 of the way down here at Indianapolis.
Yeah, and 2/3 of the way through the race. We've still got a fair way to go, and not all of the positions have been entirely decided, because we've got battles cropping up here and there and everywhere. But the current standings, with 1 hour to go, it's Christian Michael on top, with Remco Major in 2nd place, Ludovic Ferrari in the other Bentley in 3rd. Then Go Team Racing in 4th, with Burst Esport in 5th, having made an early pit stop for this final stint. Then the Pinson Drillers Esports car of James Zuber in 6th, followed by Evolution Motorsports 7th, Snow Shatton Esports in 8th, Tom Capusta and Relay Satellite Racing in 9th, and Pescara ATP Auto Tyler in 10th, with Michael Francesconi at the wheel. And that rounds up the top 10, but the 11th to 20th, it's Joachim Stesnes with the Setras Nita Velux in P11. Then it's going to be two Speedy Mike cars. First of Ostasuyi Mumwen, and then Ollie McGowan. Then Core Team Racing in 14th, with ProSimTech behind them 15th in a Core Team sandwich, because Lucas Schramek is in 16th. Then Omicron Sim Racing, not the greatest race so far, with Giancarlo Costa in 17th. Then Fernando Carato and Pushrod Racing in 18th. 19th have Valente Racing, with Donat Praban at the wheel, having replaced Bart Srobodjan. And then Jerome Priolo and the Flying Goat Mercedes rounding out the top 20. What's interesting is that the Omicron Sim Racing drivers will be swapping during this pit stop phase. Yuri Verschlusel, though, in the core team for P21. Then Blackbirds Racing, who we haven't really seen at all today, in P22. ProSimTech in 23rd. And the 3rd Speedy White car with Gonzalo Rodriguez at the wheel in 24th. Then Andrea Crespi and Absolute Motorsport 25th. Christopher Whitehouse and Joy Racing not having a great race in 26th. In fact, Andrea Crespi is out of the race, I've just noted. And finally, Christian Muscala and Scuderia Muscala are in 27th, having had a disconnection earlier on in the race. Then we have the DNS, of course, of the Wanako car, Gasper Gobank and Caspian Motorsport, as well as the car which DNS right at the start of the race. But we have got Christian Michael right now at the front, although once he makes his pit stop, that will probably be a net second, along with all of the other guys making pits as well. I think Ludovic Ferrari is potentially coming out of the pit lane now. I think that might just be a glitch on my timing screen. But yeah, we have seen those standings in the middle of this pit stop phase, which means that it's bound to shake up at least a little bit, and we'll probably see David Mroshek back at the front once everyone has done their fuel, tyres and potentially drivers, depending on their situation.
Yeah, they're looking in a fairly nice position. Once again, last time they were quickest, and a lot quicker. I mean, 1.3 seconds quicker than the car ahead, almost a second quicker than Major and Ferru as well. So certainly looking very quick, as obviously I said, they're obviously on newer tyres, whereas the guys still out are on older tyres. And it does get to a point with the old tyres where they are despite you having a lot less fuel, you're still slower because the tires are that much worse. Because mostly the drivers run the soft compound tires for pretty much all of those endurance cars, including the GTEs, LMP2s as well. You pretty much just run the softs and single, maybe sometimes double stint them. But especially on this GT3 car, you do not want to be double stinting them, as you do lose quite a bit of time. So at the moment, bursts are gaining even more time. So when they come out, they might actually have a bigger advantage. However, everyone else will then have newer tyres. So that's how the balance goes. That's how the swing goes. And it'll go back into the favour of the other cars. We'll have to see how big their lead is once everyone else makes their pit stop in the next few laps. But we're now into 56.5 minutes remaining. So we are a good 15 minutes, or maybe even a little bit more than that, since Burst made their pit stop. So they are already well in the way. As now, look at this undercut that Sansano's got. Unfortunately, had a bit of a wiggle there, but that was almost a really good overtake on Costa. Nice sweeping action through turn 8 and 9. Now on the brakes into turn number 12. Can he get it done? No, he can't. But that was almost a really nice overtake there, as we now go back to his teammate McGowan, getting passed by Andonovski. Interesting, because Andonovski has clearly got back into that car after having a bit of a mixed opening stint. So they've done 2 driver swaps, which is quite interesting, because as I mentioned earlier, there is a tiny bit of a time delay for driver swaps as well, so they will obviously get that twice, whereas most of the other cars will only get that once.
Yeah, that is interesting to see Andonovski back in the car. Maybe he feels like he has the confidence to try and go at it again, because he was quite quick when he was on track earlier in that stint, but maybe taking the gamble just with the few seconds added for a driver swap and changing with James Juba, maybe feeling like they're in a better stead with Andonovski at the wheel. It'll be interesting to see then how that challenge plays out for them. And now with other drivers in the pits, that's Remco Major now currently in the pits. He'll be getting out in a moment and he'll be replaced by his teammate David Rojek, then up into 4th, as the other guys will be heading into the pits soon. And it'll be interesting to see where they all come out, and maybe we'll see another moment with the undercover sim racing car. It won't be with the Monaco car this time, but we could still see something quite close on the exit of the pit lane. And yeah, we could see some more drama, and I think we're getting set up for that now, because this final stint is going to be really interesting, because it is just such a mixed grid at the moment, especially with these really different strategies playing out, with the Burst car especially pitting a lot earlier than these other guys. But we've also got fresh faces coming onto the grid, and some who were on earlier came off and then stepped back on. But we're currently watching Ollie McGowan. He's got a 3.5 second gap up ahead to Timotej Andonovski to try and get into that top 10. It's a bit of a challenge to make up that time, especially to such a quick driver, but obviously Speedy might to try and speed up and get to that Corvette.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to see a few different faces, as you say, get in the car. So we'll have to see who that is when those pit stops get made. But as the cars now, they can go quite a bit into each hour. So by the time we get to the 3rd hour, they're probably going to be pitting without 45 minutes remaining. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of these cars go for another sort of 8 minutes, or maybe even a little bit more if they're really good with their fuel, which is going to be quite an interesting factor for that Burst Esports situation, as they've already been out there for about 18 minutes now. So they're quite a way into their stint already, and that's going to be quite a big factor when we get towards the end of the race. As you see there, McGowan absolutely sending it there over the curb. And now I'm just looking down the order. So it seems that Major, 9th place, 1 lap down, is where he is at. And obviously the cars ahead of him still need to make a pit stop, but Major is still going to be looking fairly good for that 3rd place at least. But I want to see where he comes out in, or where Nita Velix come out in relation to Major, because I think that battle in the final stint could be another one to look out for as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we've got Jonathan Provost at the wheel of that car, haven't we? And he's just leaving the pit lane now, and where he comes out in relation to those other cars will be quite important. And I think Christian Pallison has just requested a pit stop, and he's going into the pits now, as is Ludovic Ferroui. So yeah, you can see up in the top right there, we've got an image of the pit lane, or as in America they call it pit road. But you can see as well, Timotei Andonovski, he's pulling away. That gap was about 3 seconds to Ollie McGowan earlier. Now it is 5.6 seconds. It's ebbing and flowing quite a bit, as you see. These two cars are very different speeds on different sections of the track. So clearly focused on different aspects, maybe driving styles as well. But this final hour is going to be really important for these drivers. And I think that Jonathan Provost, fresh into that car, whilst we did have Remco Major, who was very quick and very, well, not aggressive, but trying to just find those opportunities to get past, having a fresh face in that car to conduct it around the track. We've got Christian Michel just here in P1 still, he's yet to pit. But having Jonathan Provost at the wheel could be to the benefit of Undercover quite a lot, because he'll be fresh into the car. He won't have any exhaustion, because even though it is a sim race, you still get exhaustion just from sitting in front of the screen and also using the wheel, because of course it isn't just sitting there with perhaps a game controller or a keyboard. You've got to put physical inputs into such a thing, and you receive physical feedback as well. We've got Thomas Jacobs now in fourth as well for the Snow Shatten car. He's 1.4 or so seconds behind Pascal Schmidt, but he's going to go into the pit lane now, and I don't think Schmidt has gone in. So you can see a Speedy Mike car as well in the pits. So this is probably one of the last pit stops we'll see. We've got Christian Michel yet to go, as well as Pascal Schmidt. But soon enough, they will have all made their stops. But what this does mean is that David Mrozek, they've had to do a longer pit stop than these other guys, because they decided to have a shorter second stint, which is quite an interesting strategy decision, because it means that for this final stint, they're going to have a little bit of struggle to defend, because they'll have older tyres and potentially a heavier car, because they've already had a longer pit stop to the rest of the drivers. So that is just a really interesting strategical decision, in my opinion.
Indeed, and these guys have obviously spent the last week or two planning this sort of stuff, so you would think that they would get into a situation where they're obviously fairly comfortable, fairly happy with it, and they wouldn't do such strategies if they weren't confident, as we're now seeing the situation where Antonovsky's actually trying to unlap himself here, but also get Nadev, who's a little bit up the road, so this could be a little bit awkward for Antonovsky. But absolutely what you do not want to do is take out someone who's on a lap ahead of you. You obviously are allowed to unlap yourself, but you've got to do it if you know you can pull away. We did see, ironically actually, with Burst Esports, there's Mitchie Hoyer in the car a couple of weeks ago in VEC. He did have a car behind him who was clearly faster and was unlapping himself. As Antonovsky there dives it down the inside, that's not what you want to be able to do. It doesn't matter if you're faster, there's still the lap ahead, but it could be a smart move for Mrozek to let Antonovsky go, just to avoid an incident. He doesn't need to ruin his own race for the sake of some ego holding up Antonovsky. And Mitchie Hoyer, his teammate, ironically, fell a bit short of that back in VEC in Indianapolis a couple of weeks ago, where he just wasn't letting this car through, even though they were clearly quicker, and it would have been the safer option to do that. So hopefully some of the Burst guys are telling him that maybe that is the safer option, which I think he is just doing now, actually, because, as I said, there's no reason. Just let Timo go, let him go and fight Nadev, and then you can do your own race from there, because clearly Timo has got some decent pace. So that is probably the smart decision there for Burst to let him go.
Yeah, most definitely. And I mean, once Christian Michel and Pascal Schmidt have made their pit stops, because I don't think Schmidt has made his second pit stop yet. I might be wrong, actually. But they've still got quite a safe distance behind them, so may as well let Timo through. But we're now going to go to Cameron Sansano, 15th place, looking to get 14th off Lucas Schramek. He's going to brake ever so slightly later at the end of the straight. You can see those front brake discs glowing, but he is going to get that 14th position with quite a good run along the back straight there. Lucas Schramek trying to find a way through, maybe reel back a bit of that time that he's just lost, but he's not going to be successful, and that is going to be a solid 14th now for the Speedy Mike car, the one that actually leads Speedy Mike car, because this has left Schramek in a Speedy Mike sandwich, as Sansano has gone a little bit deep there, and that's going to cost him a bit of time, which is not what he wants when he's trying to hold a position that he has just taken.
Yeah, you can slide around a little bit with these cars, and if you do it too much, you just literally won't accelerate out of the corners. Massansano seems to have got it all sorted again and is looking like he's able to defend from Shremek. As Shremek's actually got a car quite close behind him as well, I believe. So there's going to be a bit of a battle here forming for 13th place. And that is Blackbirds behind him. I'm not sure if that's actually for position. I can't quite see on the tower because it doesn't look like that is the car behind him. But either way, the car, that's Remco Major. Remco Major has gone off there, coming out of turn number 4. And that is now Ludovic Ferriu just behind him as well, I believe. So that could be quite an important moment for Remco Major, because obviously we are waiting to see what the Nita Velix guys are going to do. And that is a couple more seconds lost, along with the spin that they had earlier with Antonovsky. This could be quite an important moment for them, getting or not second place later on.
Yeah, well, we saw Remco Major was quicker than Ludovic Ferriu, but it doesn't look like Jonathan Provost has quite the pace of his teammate, because he's now got to defend from the one-move car, which they passed so easily early on in the race. But a car ahead that we're just going to be navigating now along with these guys. That's the Blackbirds car that we haven't seen an awful lot actually this race. In fact, this might be the first time it's been in the stream. But we've just seen the core team Corvette head into the pits as well. Now David Mrozek is in second place, still waiting for Christian Michael to pit, which means they're going to have quite a short pit stop and quite a light car for this latter stage of the race. Now Ludovic Ferriu into turn 1, down the inside with the Blackbirds car, letting them through on the outside. It's going to be side by side, under braking as they're going to hold it next to each other for the second part. A little bit of door to door, but there is just going to be the undercover car that comes out on top as Ludovic Ferriu sends it back down the inside. Can he hold it, as this will become the outside for the next part? For the next turn, that fast chicane, it's not going to be quite enough. And we've got that McLaren behind as well, which would probably not want to unlap itself in the midst of such an intense battle, because along the straight they go. But that was incredibly close. And that's going to be a replay of Jonathan Provost, who he just locked the rears, it looks like. And yeah, he had a drift. Didn't spin it quite the way, but it's cost him a lot of time, that mistake has. And you can see how Ferriu was just able to close up that gap massively as a result of the mistake by the undercover driver.
Yeah, obviously, you're right. That was Provost, not Major, as they have swapped over now. So now we've got to see, actually, has Provost got the same pace? Is he close enough on pace to actually make this work? We know that probably Nita Velix, with their drivers of Happinen and obviously Christian Michel in the car at the moment, they are going to be pretty much on the same pace. But can Provost get them, even keep them on the podium? Because this is now effectively turning into a podium battle with this one-move car. As we see, Nita Velix are in the are in the pit stop as we speak at the top. But obviously these guys need to come around one more time to see how far behind they are going to be. Chris Michel is there, sitting, waiting for his pit stop to end. And the pit stop is obviously the best part of a minute or so, just sitting, standing still. As Mrozek now comes back, he will take the lead once again. And this gap is then the gap that the others need to chase. But it should be a fairly healthy amount by the time Christian Michel comes out of the pit box.
Yeah, what is going to be interesting though is that we're going to have potentially a battle for the podium in this final stage of the race, because we've got 43 minutes to go. Pascal Schmidt now in second, Christian Michel in third, of course, because he's just in the pit. He's still stopped though, he isn't moving yet, and that's onto the grass actually, Jonathan Provost, and that's going to give Ludovic Ferriu the position. So yeah, it looks like Provost may be struggling a little bit more than his teammate was in this Bentley, and you can see he's slithering around on track, just doesn't seem to be able to find the traction he wants. Maybe the brake pass not quite to his liking, I'm not entirely sure, but Ludovic Ferriu actually entering the pit lane, I think. No, that can't be right. That's Mika Happinen entering the pit lane now. So, yeah, you can see already that gap, 1.1 seconds as a result of that mistake by Jonathan Provost. Maybe he's just not quite as comfortable in this Bentley as Major was, because Ludovic Ferriu, he managed to seize that opportunity well. But we are back up with our race leader now, having been the only car to set a 1:22 lap time, their best lap time being a 1:22.7, fastest in the session by at least 3 tenths, or maybe more like 2 tenths, because that was a 22.798. But this is Jonathan Provost. You can see snatched that left-hand curb, and that slightly upset the car a little bit, carried a little bit too much speed onto the grass, which just pulls you off the track and costs a lot of straight line speed, especially when you're trying to exit onto a mini straight like that.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know if it's maybe to do with the car. It could just be to do with being in that position. Something that is rarely talked about in the world of sim racing and esports in general, across many genres, is the mental side of it. Just being used to being in a good position, and to suddenly jump up, as we said many times this broadcast already, that car has jumped up so much. Obviously, the BRP is helping that, and then to suddenly be in a good position is obviously quite a big thing. Obviously, nerves come into it, just the general mentality of not making mistakes when you're in such a crucial position. And that is why the likes of Burst Esport and Roman Grosjean Esports and all these the bigger teams that there are and have been around in SRC, the reason why they do well is because they handle that pressure very well. As we now see Thomas Jacobs, what can he do with I think this is Pallison behind him, getting that slipstream into turn number 1. Who is going to late break it? Looks like it's going to be the BMW driver, Go Team Racing, going deep, doing a nice little block pass there. No way back for Thomas Jacobs, and he's down into 7th with Go Team Racing up into 6th place.
Yeah, so we're seeing right now as we are in that final stage of the race, and you can see the slow-mo where the rear just comes a little bit too loose for Provost, and that takes him off the line, and it just upsets the car a little bit too much. But now back up with Thomas Jacobs. We are at the point in the race now where fatigue is beginning to set in, because Jacobs has been in this snow shacking car for quite a long time. Although he is beginning to put on the pressure to Timotei Andonovski, who's only got a 7/10 of a second gap to Georgi Nadev as well. So we could see emerging in just a few moments' time the another battle, and this time for position 6 on track. So this is becoming quite hot up at the top once more, because looks like we could have a battle for second place, because Mika Happinen is not far behind Pascal Schmidt at all, and Pascal Schmidt appears to have requested a pit stop. Happinen is exiting the pit now, but we've only got 14 minutes to go, and that means that these drivers are going to be starting to go for the positions for a final time, because it is at this stage in the race where you want to start settling into those very final positions and just getting those minor places up towards the end of the race. So we can see a little bit more aggression there. You can see in the top right, Pascal Schmidt currently in P2, entering into the pit lane, and that's pretty much going to round out our pit stop phase essentially, and we're going to see what the standings are at the end of this, because I know Mika Happinen is back. I think he's back in the Nita Velix, actually, a similar story to Andonovski maybe, but you can see him up in the top right there. P3 will soon be P2 once he passes Schmidt, who's currently in the pit. But yeah, we are seeing as well Andonovski really putting on a bit of pressure to Georgi Nadev in that BMW.
Yes, you are right. Happinen has got back into that car. Quite an interesting strategy to do, sort of swap and then swap back. We have seen a couple of teams do that. Not very likely, because a lot of teams would like their drivers to get comfortable and then stay in there at the same time for a second hour. However, you did mention a lap ago or so about driver fatigue. Obviously, in a 3-hour race, you're not really going to get completely fatigued, but there's still going to be a little bit, because obviously, if you know it's going to be a 6-hour race, your mindset is a little bit different. When you know it's a 3-hour race, you come in, you already see there's only 38 minutes left. You already start to get into that finishing mentality, whereas if this was a 6-hour race and there was another 3 hours and 38 minutes left, you would then be in a slightly different mindset with how far you are. So that is obviously quite important, but obviously that's just how they decided to do it. Quite an interesting one, and maybe it will work out for them, keeping the drivers a bit more fresh, having a little bit of a break and then getting back in. But certainly that has worked out for them, as they have now got an 18-second lead to One Move Esports, and then a further 5 seconds back to Undercover as well. So certainly working out for them. And despite all of this pit stop stuff, Burst still have a 45-50 second lead. So whatever they've done today, their pace and strategy has worked, and they've certainly been quite dominant in the first 2.5 hours.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty much reflective of their championship as a whole, because they just once again have pulled it out of the bag and just had mega pace this evening, as usual, really, as we're beginning to see. I mean, I think they finished on the podium. They've definitely finished on the podium every single race so far this season, and it looks like they're set to continue their trend. But what is interesting, though, is Timotej Andonovski battling for P5, because on that rear view camera we saw with Georgian Nadev just a second ago, he is really closing up in some of these braking zones, because that Corvette, especially with the Andonovski at the wheel, it does seem to be really good under brakes, which is really beneficial, especially with some of these heavy braking zones, which are the prime opportunities for overtakes around some of these tracks. Now, what is interesting, though, is that that BMW doesn't seem to be particularly slow. So it is still going to be quite difficult for Andonovski to get past. But is Nadev going to be able to hold on for another 36 minutes and 25 seconds is the real question. And if Timotej keeps this kind of pressure on, I think that eventually he will be able to make it through. And in fact, saying that, Andonovski has a drive-through penalty, and that's going to be huge, because that could drop him all the way down to 8th, potentially 9th. I don't think he'll drop that far, though. But that is really not good for the Pinsum Drillers car, who are obviously trying to fight for that 5th position. They're not going to be able to get it. In fact, they're going to be dropping down to, potentially P8. And he's going to go and serve it straight away onto the grass a little bit as he heads into the pit lane. But yeah, that is not ideal at all, because there's only a limit to the amount of speed you can carry through the pit lane, obviously. Hence the pit limiter for safety reasons. But yeah, he is in the pit lane now. It's not too long around here at Indianapolis, though. It's quite a straight pit lane. You can see him off in the distance now, though. But this is David Mrozek, who is in the lead of the race, 45 seconds clear of Mika Hakkinen. In that second place, number 30, Cetrez Nita Velex. So just a lot of speed. And Donat Prodan as well has got a penalty. But this is Thomas Jacobs in the Snow Shattered Esports McLaren. He is behind the race leader on track, but he's a little bit further in terms of actual race distance as well. I think he's just been lapped by the race leader, which means only 5 cars with 2.5 hours gone almost are still on the lead lap, which just goes to show the absolute sheer pace of these lead guys, and also the distribution of speed across this whole grid. Because I mean, currently Oliver Newman in the Joy Racing car is 13 laps down. Then ahead of him, Christian Muscala 8 laps down. But I mean, even so, a lot of the grid are at least 1 lap, and most of them even minimum 2 laps down. So it is quite a spread, and that's why we have such a distributed championship. But that also means that the individual places on the championship are really closely contested, which is always fun to watch out for as well. But we've got Jerome Priolo now in the pit lane in that flying goat car. He's going to get going now. So I don't think that's a driver change, but that's a very late pit stop, which means they aren't going to have to go all too far for this final just over half an hour. But there's Donat Pradhan, who's just served his penalty that he received a second ago for the Volante Racing outfit, and currently in P18, that number 66 car doing an okay job. I'm sure they'd like to be higher though.
Yeah, that flying go one's quite interesting. We've seen cars go towards about 40 minutes, which would indicate 2 70-minute stints, so an hour and 10 minutes for the first 2 stints. So going even this further, I do know, if I remember rightly, the Mercedes possibly can go the furthest on the field, but I don't know if it can go that far. So maybe if there's a teammate listening, they could let us know if that is just strategy, because that is quite an interesting one to pit that late. But they obviously had, they would have had a much shorter pit stop, which is quite interesting. Some yellow flags pop up into Sector 1. And interestingly now, David Mrozek is losing the lead just a little bit. It's now gone down to the low 40 seconds. It was up to about 46 a few laps to go. So last lap they were 1.1 seconds slower than Nita Velux as well. So let's have a look here at Schramek coming out of the pit lane. Oh, big crash there with Muscala involved, one of the Speedy Mites and Omicron. That's a bit of a weird one. Maybe I didn't even see the third car initially, so maybe they were so close they just misjudged the braking, but there's obviously a crash there. That must have been the yellow in Sector 1. Nice camera angle there. As, Shomek was coming out of the pits, probably looking in his mirrors, wondering what was going on there. But now we're looking at Mojek, as we say, 42 seconds in the lead. They are slower, so we'll have to see if they can hold on, but that is certainly quite a lot. So here is Christian Muscala. Oh, yeah, just slightly... the Speedy My car was moving a little bit, but I think Christian there just slightly misjudging it a little bit. And, yeah, having to dive down the inside, but unfortunately causing a crash.
What's really interesting about that is that Muscala isn't even on the... He's 3 laps down on the next car. We've got Rory McDuff now, currently in P10, battling for P9, side by side through here, across the chicane, and they're going to touch doors again. He's going to be able to reclaim that position, just about getting the exit he needs. And you can see behind as well, you've got another car joining in the party. I think that's another Nita Velix car. Yes, it is. Down the inside as well. So that's going to be up into, I think he might even be lapping them actually. But that was really interesting battle there with Adriano Opportuni just being overtaken there by Rory McDuff. But this is Magnus Kunnerup, who has got into the Omicron Sim racing car, and he was involved in that crash just a moment ago with the Muscala, Scuderia Muscala car. But we've got Andrea Arujo now in the Pro Sim Tech BMW. He's not able to find a way through here, but he is really putting on the pressure to the Omicron Sim Racing Aston Martin.
Yeah, that was a bit of an awkward situation because, as you say, you had the blue flags coming through. But firstly, let's see this one first. Yeah, Muscala. It just looks like Muscala slightly misjudged the situation. Very difficult because obviously there was 2 cars in front of him. But yeah, when you're the driver behind 99% of the time, it is going to end up being your fault. Unfortunately, but yeah, with that. But with the one afterwards, yeah, just a bit of an awkward situation there with the 2 Nita Velix. And obviously that helped out the teammate just a little bit. Rowan McDuff helped him out a little bit with having opportunity having to brake a bit earlier for the blue flags, as well as we go back to Davin Mocek, who has done the business already this season with Michi Hoyer. They both did the first race of the season out in Silverstone, that was, and they got the win on that day, with Mocek doing the final stint on that occasion as well. It did rain just a tiny bit, just a bit of drizzle in the final few laps, so we'll have to see if that comes about in Indianapolis, but I believe it is not going to rain during the course of the race, or at least in the last 30 minutes, so it looks like it's going to be a nice, fairly even stint, and for now, the lap times are looking fairly good for Davin Mocek. Last lap, he did the same pace as happening as well, so it looks like he's going to be fairly comfortable there in the lead. Just needs to hold on and not make too many mistakes.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, currently they're quite comfortable. I mean, they've lost maybe 2.5 seconds to Mika Hakkinen behind them, but in all fairness, that isn't really going to have a huge impact, because with only half an hour to go, they're going to have to be extremely slow to lose such a monumental gap. And it is just about bringing her to the end of the race. We've got yellow flags in Sector 1. And that's the Christian Muscala. He's got a penalty now. And that was Kunnerup again off in the gravel trap. So I wonder if they've had yet another incident together, because that coincided quite interestingly. I'd like to know what happened to Kunnerup there, as we've got Mika Hakkinen right now in P2. He's just passed his teammate there of Rory McDuff, who's currently sitting in P9 with the number 60, such as Nita Velix car. But yeah, Kunnerup off into the gravel trap we saw a moment ago, and this is going to be a replay of that incident. So through the first chicane they went, and you can see that's Christian Muscala ahead of them, and we look off the back. So Christian Muscala is still ahead. Oh, he just lost it all by himself then. So it looks like that was just a snap oversteer.
Yeah, hit the grass. The grass is deadly around here. We saw it with Andonovski earlier, right at the beginning of the race, where he had that little bit of a spin as well. Just catches you out if you get a little wheel on it, as Muscala goes through the pit lane there. And now we're seeing happen in 41 seconds. That's a big, tough ask in 30 minutes. As Muscala now comes through the pit lane. Slightly updated livery for this race. They've gone for a slightly lighter shade of blue there in the number 86, but not really helping them too much. They have not had the race that the two brothers the two Muscala brothers would have wanted. And they'll have to regroup and come back next time out for Bathurst.
Yeah, definitely. And I think once again, Bathurst is going to be a really interesting one because it couldn't be more different to this track, because this one is just so much wider. And with Bathurst, you've got that hill section, which is just very difficult to overtake on. And it's such close proximity as well. I think with the differences in the way the cars work, with, of course, the Bentley being really quick through the turns but slower on the straights, that versus perhaps a quicker car in the straights but slower in the corners could be a really interesting mix to see which car is quicker overall, because qualifying pace might not necessarily translate into a race victory there, because the different mechanics of the cars essentially are going to have a really big impact due to the unique nature of Bathurst. But right now we've got Ludovic Ferrowy, who has currently pulled away from Jonathan Provost a bit. He's now 10 seconds clear. So whilst Major was really quick in the undercover car, it looks like Jonathan Provost is struggling with the new version of the Bentley, especially as well as you were saying earlier with the psychological aspect of hopping into such a high position, which they aren't used to at all in their car. And I think the One Move Esports team have managed to adapt to it a little bit better. Maybe not quite as quick overall, but I think Major was just absolutely flying in that Bentley. It was quite amazing.
Yeah, it certainly shows it wasn't necessarily just the car. Remco was certainly feeling today. He was feeling spicy, but it is a team sport, and therefore you need two drivers. So that's not to say obviously Provost is doing badly. It's just he isn't quite on the speed. He's still there in 4th position, and with 25 minutes to go, it looks like he should be able to hold on that 40-second gap to Go Team Racing as well, unless Pallison can do some miracle work there in P5. But either way, this is going to be a very good result for the undercover team, who have obviously, as we've mentioned a few times now, struggled a little bit through the season, currently in 14th place in the championship, but very close to the cars ahead. So with this good result, that could jump them up quite high, even towards the likes of maybe P8, depending on where the other teams score. So this is going to be a very good scoring race for the number 45. And it's good to see that. Good to see some other people up there. And it's not just sort of the similar people up there all the time, but unfortunately you can't obviously always beat Burst, especially when it seems that pretty much everyone else is having a bad day apart from Burst and Cetras Nita Velix so far.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. They're just ridiculously quick, and I think we have had some scrappy moments with pretty much all of the cars on the grid this evening. It hasn't been the cleanest of races, but at least the start of the race is a lot cleaner than we saw at Portland, thanks to the new starting procedure, which I think has worked out quite well, because it has meant that we've had some really good on-track battles, as well as avoided those huge collisions that can occur at the first turn, especially with a track such as Indianapolis. But once again, I think actually Thomas Jacobs has got past Pascal Schmidt, who's in the Evolution Motorsports BMW. Yeah, he has. So that gap now 0.7 of a second, and I think Thomas Jacobs will be quite happy about that, because about 10 minutes ago he was battling to try and get past. He has succeeded in that now. He has got to pull away though, and that is where he's going to struggle, because Pascal Schmidt is still sticking to the rear of that McLaren quite tightly, because he doesn't want to let him go. With such a short amount of time remaining, less than 25 minutes, he still is in with a chance of finishing in P6, and he doesn't want to give up quite yet. And if he can try and regain that position, he'll have to defend again, but it is still possible as the clock starts ticking down. Thomas Jacobs just needs to hold on to it. He's got a bit of a gap in front, so it's unlikely that he's going to be able to get anything higher than 6th. So all he has to do is defend from Schmidt, because with only 20 minutes to go, this is the highest possible for him, but definitely not the lowest.
Yeah, it's always easier said than done. Unfortunately, in this battle, as you say, been going on for many laps now, but certainly Thomas Jacobs is having a nice race here at Indianapolis, and Schmidt struggling just a little bit. Interesting that Evolution put him in for 2 hours and only Leon Bock in for 1 hour, as it does seem that Bock was the faster driver, but Schmidt himself is a very fast driver, and obviously they just thought that would be the best way for them, but unfortunately that's not how it's turned out. And you can see that McLaren's actually very good in a straight line. The BMW not being able to get too close and he will have to try and work his way into a bit of momentum, because with these cars, the GT3 cars, that don't have loads and loads of slipstream, that's one thing that you have to really work on. You have to, over the course of a couple of laps, if the car ahead isn't making a mistake, you have to slowly build up, gain just a tenth at a time. When you're finally in that proper slipstream, that's when you have to absolutely go for it. So you can see here, you just gain the tiniest bit, but not enough. As soon as you get another car length or two, that's when you really gain the effect, and that's what he needs to work his way through over the next couple of laps. It is certainly something that you have to build up over the course of a few laps.
Yeah, definitely, because he's getting really quite close, because he doesn't want to let that position go, and it shows that these two drivers are pretty much evenly matched on pace, and this could be a battle that lasts to the end of the race now, as they're both desperate to get that point, those extra few points rather, that you get for finishing a position up in the order. So Pascal Schmidt, he will be trying to find a way through, but as you said, that McLaren does look good in the straight line, and that's going to make it a little bit more difficult for this BMW to try and sneak his way. Though with the traffic ahead, that could play to Pascal Schmidt's advantage.
Yeah, certainly could. See here, he's just a bit closer, but not quite close enough. But if he can keep this momentum, stay this close, the next time he gets to straight, either on the back straight or the front straight next time around, he will be right in that slipstream and able to make an overtake. However, this snow shattered car is looking very fast in a straight line, so that's going to be a little bit difficult for the BMW. As they now work their way out through turn 6 onto the back straight. He is very close indeed, and this is where he's going to be getting the proper slipstream. So this might be his opportunity to send it down the inside. Does he have the ability on the brakes? It's going to be a bit of a dive. He's got his nose down there. Can he get the full car? Yes, he can. And will he hit the grass, or will he make it? No, he's just about made it, and that is the move. We saw that over the last couple laps. He's slowly built up, slowly got the car there, and finally, when there's the opportunity, he's made it. And now Thomas Jacobs is going to have to come back and maybe try and re-overtake for that 6th place. But just 20 minutes remaining here in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I think they both did very well there. Schmidt very well to keep it off the grass, because we have seen that grass is deadly on the exit of the hairpin. But also Thomas Jacobs as well, just pulling over to the left a little bit more than you normally would, just to make sure he wouldn't collide with the BMW, which is good thinking with just 20 minutes to go, because you don't want to come this far and then not make it to the end of the race, which we have seen happen before, and there is nothing really more frustrating than being so close to the end of a race and then not being able to make anything from it due to a mistake or not being able to finish. But right now, Pascal Schmidt, he's going to try and pull away, but Thomas Jacobs will not let him do that, and he will once again try and make his way through. So we might see a bit of a ding-dong battle between these two as they battle to hold that 6th position when that checkered flag is waved in just 20 minutes time. So this is going to be interesting, because it's not the longest of laps. It's only 1 minute 23 odd to go round it. The likelihood, or the extra length plus 0 with that leader getting to the checkered flag will be important. But you can see there a bit of a drift on for Pascal Schmidt, just holding it onto the tarmac, and he did manage to succeed in stopping Jacobs being able to get through. But yeah, it won't be an awful lot extra for David Moshek when that 0 minutes is reached for him to get to the line. So that isn't going to be much more than the time we see on the board, if you understand what I'm getting at, as I explained it in quite a roundabout way. But yeah, you can see now Pascal Schmidt, he's up to 1 second ahead, so maybe he's found an extra bit of speed just to try and extend down. You see he's touched the grass a little bit, but he is pulling away a fair bit from Thomas Jacobs at the moment.
Yeah, he was obviously able to make that overtaking opportunity, and is keeping that pace advantage over the next couple of laps. And I've just had a look through the chat, and Remco is saying that the car has a bit of damage, which is also not going to be helping the situation for Prevost there in 4th place. But to be fair to him, he is keeping that gap of around 10-11 seconds, now 12 seconds to one move. But Habonen is catching up to David Mrozek. The issue is he's just, I think, going to run out of laps. He is around a second a lap quicker, give or take, but there are not 36 laps left in the race for him to do that. So he might get close, but as long as Mrozek isn't making a mistake, it should be okay. And now Farouk is letting through Muscala. Just did the little flick of the lights there just to say, on you go, mate. And now he is going to be dropping back there. He is 30 seconds behind with that 12-second gap behind, as we mentioned. So no reason to fight for Prevost, as we're seeing here now in 4th place. He's got 11 seconds now to catch with 15 behind. So it's sort of got to that point in the race where these guys just need to make sure they're not making any further mistakes. Most of the racing is done by this point. They just need to make sure they're keeping it on the black stuff in a straight line and going, as now we move down the field to 5th place. We got Georgi Nedev for Go Team Racing, and they're having another strong position there in 5th place. They've been about 5th, 6th place in quite a few races so far, but they are currently 3rd in the championship overall, such is the way of certain teams sort of doing a couple of races and then also missing some, such as RHG and Williams. So they are there in 5th place doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, and in a championship, consistency is key, and attending every race and finishing well is going to put you in a much better stead at winning a championship than having a few good races and then maybe not attending or finishing poorly in others. And I think First Esport have actually done both. They've finished really well and they've been very consistent as well. So that is truly how to win a championship. But yeah, to finish high up, they're doing it the right way, just attending every race and doing as best they can and avoiding any incidents that could potentially prematurely end their races. But now we're seeing the P2, number 30, Nita Valix, and the number 60 are still quite close, even though they're on separate laps. However, we're going to go back down to Speedy Mike, who once again seem to be battling each other. We've got Cameron Sansano just ahead of Ollie McGowan. The two drivers actually challenging each other quite hard. Number 91 ahead of 92, but it doesn't look like it's set to stay that way, because with 15 minutes to go, these two teammates could start battling really quite hard, because although they are in the same team, they're still fighting each other on track and in the championship. And I think they're actually letting through Jacobs there in his McLaren. So you could see Ollie McGowan had to yield a little bit of time. I'm going to ride on board with Thomas Jacobs now, who's 1.6 seconds behind Pascal Schmidt. So he is dropping back a little bit, that BMW having made his way back through. But you can see Connor up there in the Omicron Sim Racing car has had to let him through. And Thomas Jacobs actually running side by side with Cameron Sansano through that heavy braking zone. And Ollie McGowan still trying to find his nose, a little place to give it a slip up the inside of Cameron Sansano, but just not finding the speed or the rim to make it work. We've also got the Pinson Drillers car. I think that's Timotei Andonovski as well behind them. So that's going to be yet another bit of time they have to yield as they let Andonovski through. In fact, Andonovski could be a bit of a threat to Thomas Jacobs if he can get past the Speedy Mike cars quickly enough, because that gap is only 1.5 seconds, and this is one of the fastest drivers on the grid. He has got the clock to run against, though, and not just Thomas Jacobs, because that 14 minutes is going to make it a little bit difficult. He gets past Ollie McGowan first, but he's still got Sansano ahead of him, and right now it looks like Thomas Jacobs has got a little bit of clean air. He will come up to some traffic in a moment, but for now he should be able to pull away a little bit. But Andonovski and Sansano seem to be gaining a little bit on him. Therefore, I do think that the Pinson Drillers could actually pose quite the threat to Snow Shattered Esports in this very last stage of the race, because there isn't an awful lot of time left.
Now, this could potentially be a double move for Andonovski. If he can get Jacobs quick enough, he will have enough time to get that extra couple of seconds up to Evolution as well. So this could potentially be a 6th place finish for Andonovski if he can work this correctly. We have seen him make a couple of mistakes so far. Obviously, one of the issues was not his fault, but he did have obviously the spin, or maybe two, due to his own mistakes as well. So he needs to play this one correctly and not make any sort of major issues here with Thomas Jacobs, because that will allow him enough time to get up to Evolution and Pascal Schmidt as well. So he needs to play this one well, and there might be 2 positions on the cards.
Yeah, he's going to have to push hard, but saying that, he has gained already. He's already halved the gap to Thomas Jacobs in front of him since he got past Cameron Sansano. So he is in good stead, but catching up is not quite as easy as overtaking, as we've seen countless times this evening. In fact, we've actually got these two teammates giving an example, because Ollie McGowan is still riding very close to the rear of the 91, his teammate. But even so, even having potentially quicker pace, it's still much harder to get past other drivers. And you're seeing that now, just not finding the room, especially in these S sections. And it's only on the straights. And because they're in the same machinery and the same livery as well, not that that makes an awful lot of performance difference. We are going to see a move around the outside, though, for Ollie McGowan, going for P12 into the heavy braking zone. And they contact with each other. And it looks like that's the Volante car, I think, behind them. And they're going to have to be careful about that. No, but they do contact, and that's both of them off the track. That's going to be a 360 spin for Ollie McGowan. But luckily, it was only off track for the Volante car and managed to regain control completely. But that is not what you really want to see at this stage of the race.
Yeah. Well, I know it's a difficult section of the track, but when it's blue flag, sometimes it's just easier to get out of the way and then avoid the spin. But unfortunately, yeah, the number 92 there, I believe it was, being the one spun around, losing about 5 seconds. And now Andonovski, we're just saying, if he can get Jacobs quick enough, he might be able to get to Evolution. But first stage, look how quick that McLaren is in a straight line. Even in the full slipstream, the Corvette is struggling a little bit, but big on the brakes. Timo goes. Can he get it stopped? Just about. Is it enough, though, to hold the position in turn number 2? Oh, bit of contact there, actually, on the exit, as Andonovski comes out wide just a little bit. But he's made that position into 7th place. The robust move there, late on the brakes and deep into turn 2 to hold on to that. And now Andonovski's off to chase down Evolution for 6th place with only 10 minutes left in the race.
Yeah, that was a good move from Andonovski, and it's just showing how good he can be on the brakes. And I think the brakes on that Corvette have been working quite well this evening, because so long as you have the inside line for the second part, that turn 2 on the exit of turn 1, then you should be able to hold it, because it's a lot harder to keep it around the outside, as Thomas Jacobs demonstrated, although there was a little bit of contact there. But yeah, Timothy Andonovski now, that gap in front is at 3 seconds. He's got 10 minutes to close it up. It's going to be a bit of work for him to do, but we're going to see the onboard of Donat Prodan in the Volante car. So this was just a few moments ago with the two Speedy Mike cars colliding, and it looks like just on the right hand there, maybe closing the door a little bit too much as they're side by side. I think it probably would have been better for the number 92 though, just to back off a little bit, because that is a faster car who he should have been letting through.
Yeah, difficult situation there, obviously, with the teammates having a bit of contact as well. But yeah, I mean, they're obviously on different laps and stuff. Just one of them possibly should have chosen the slightly better option there, but now that is not how it went. And obviously they are racers, so they see the bit of tarmac and, you know, if gap car and all of that. So we will have to work out how that one goes. And oh yeah, look at that! Just you can see the Porsche pitching in, but then maybe Volante didn't need to be there in the first place considering their lap down. So that I'm sure will be argued about between them at some point. But now Andonovski's battle is really to chase down Evolution. He's only 2.5 seconds behind with 9 minutes to go. And obviously, it all depends on where the number 49 of Burst Esports are, and they're coming into the final sector now. So it's going to be somewhere in the region of about 8 minutes 40 by the time they get to the line. So obviously doing a bit of maths can work out. There's going to be somewhere in the region of about 7 laps to go when we get towards that, maybe 6 laps to go when we get towards that final part of the race. But it's all about when David Mrozek crosses the line, will be whenever these guys will get an extra lap or not.
Yeah, and that is always an interesting aspect, because while there is the timer, you still have potentially another whole minute and nearly a minute and a half on top of that, depending on when the leader crosses the line and when the 0 minute mark is reached. But what is interesting there is that Andonovski has got quite a lot of speed. He is closing up rapidly as Rafael Zuma gets a penalty there. However, Pascal Schmidt, we know he can defend, but we know that Andonovski is good at attacking. We've seen that move into turn 1 multiple times now, just heavy on the brakes, managing to get it turned in and just slide it through the inside. But we have got the race leader here now, David Mrozek, towards the latter stage of the lap, now just heading on to the final turn complex before he heads onto the pit straight. But that gap behind him to P2 and that Nita Velix car with Mika happening at the wheel is 35 seconds. It hasn't really been changing that much, so it shows he's still running a competitive pace. He's got to get past that Bentley in front of him though. But with 7 minutes 20 to go, all he has to do is get it home at just a comfortable pace. He doesn't need to push because he is really quite clear to that car behind. All he needs to do is just, basically just drive it home almost as a Sunday afternoon drive. That was Rafael Zuma for Blackbirds Racing serving the drive-through penalty. We just saw him receive P22 right now. Not an ideal position for them to be in. They're on the same lap as only one other car, and that's Magnus Kunnerup in that Aston Martin, the Omicron Sim Racing car. But this is Christian Muscala, and now we must remember that he is not on the same lap as anyone. He's 3 laps down on Antonio Navarro, which is the car in front of him in P24. However, Christian Muscala we saw get involved in that incident earlier as well, which is really interesting considering he wasn't battling either of the cars he hit. So that might be one for the stewards. That might be a potential penalty for the start of the next race. But it is Antonio Navarro now. So this is the car ahead of Christian Muscala, who was just talking about. He's 3 laps ahead. He's 6 laps down off the lead, whereas the Scuderia Muscala car is 9 laps down off the leader. And even then, this car is not on the same lap as any other cars because Magnus Kunnerup, the car in front of him, is 5 laps down on the leader. And you can see him there in the Omicron machine. And it's not been the greatest race at Omicron so far, currently running in P23. They may be looking to have a better time of it next time at Bathurst because, it just hasn't quite worked out for them. They've been involved in a few incidents here and there, and it's all just added up and just cost them a fair bit. And I think they've probably got some damage to contend with as well, which is going to be impacting their lap times. And then this is the car in front of them. So Rafael Zuma, we just saw serve a penalty. They're on the same lap. So this is P22 for the Blackbirds car, which was hardly featured on the stream so far. And you can see he's a minute and a half off. So right at the bottom, we've seen it really stretch out. And I mean, the Muscala, the Scuderia Muscala, they had that disconnection early on in the race, which pretty much ended the race before it started. But they have been competitive in multiple outings, but tonight just wasn't one of them because, for example, at the Nürburgring, they were doing really well for a period of time. But we've now got Ollie McGowan in the top right, P13, number 92, still trying to get past their teammate Cameron Sansano, number 91. So these two Speedy Mike cars once again battling with each other, 2 of the 3 Speedy Mike cars in the championship. And it looks like Cameron Sansano, whilst he is ahead, he's not necessarily quicker because Ollie McGowan has been able to close up once again, even having spun. But we've got less than 5 minutes to go, so if McGowan wants to get past the number 91, he's going to really have to push. And if he does have to push, we might see an error and a mistake, which is not what you want at such a late stage in this race.
And those Speedy Mike boys have already had a bit of an interesting battle so far. And I'm sure not only their team boss, but the director of this championship, Sean Jacobs, is going to be feeling a little bit uneasy when these two boys start going and fighting again. McGowan really late on the brakes there into the first corner, and I think he wants his position after obviously dropping a few seconds earlier on. He's now getting there, only a couple of laps to go now. This is really an important point of the race for him. If he wants to get that move, some people like to get that move and then try and pull away, and others will try and wait till the very final lap, but it looks like he wants to make a move himself there in 13th position, but it is getting very close between these teammates, and obviously the tension will just increase with that. But rule number 1 is obviously don't hit your teammate, but then obviously rule number 2 is yourself. You always want to beat your teammate.
Yeah, definitely, and that is the competitive spirit coming through. And people the team that don't have a teammate are the Flying Goat team, of course, that Soul Mercedes P19. Once again, it doesn't seem like it's been going too well, but they have only done 2 pit stops. So having pitted about 33 minutes ago, they've had quite a light final stint as that's contact, and that's going to be Cameron Sansano. He's hit the back of a McLaren, it looks like. He's going to spin. That's going to cost him at least one position. Could it cost him two? No, it looks like he's going to hold on to 13th, but he has got a penalty as a result of that. Having gone off the track, he is going to have to do a drive-through with just 2.5 minutes to go. That couldn't be more frustrating for the Speedy Mike car, and it wasn't as a result of the battle they were having.
And he has to make sure he serves that as well, because if he doesn't serve it and he gets to the checkered flag without serving it, it will, I believe, just add one lap to his race. So that'll be quite important that he serves that to make sure he only loses 30 seconds and not a whole lap. So let's have a look here. Ollie McGowan lets through the Knight of Velux car. I assume that was the second place one. And then here is obviously coming the other one, which I believe he's going to have to let through as well, because he was a lap down for both of them, I believe. And coming into this final sector, it's going to get a little bit awkward here with Sansano obviously trying to get out ahead of his teammate and just not really slowing down enough for the second Knight of Velux car that he was trying to let through. So it's a bit of an awkward situation there. And we're now into the final minute and a half of this race. Burst is still leading by 37 seconds. And this is going to be quite a dominant win with only 4 drivers on the lead lap.
Yeah, that's a really low proportion considering we started with 31. That's almost as low as 1/8 of the field being on that lead lap, which just goes to show that some of the pace of these drivers, especially these top guys, are very high. But I think that incident there with the Nita Velux car and the Speedy White is a very interesting one. And we're going to ride on board with the Cameron Sansano now. So you can see he moves to the inside. You can also see actually the rear view mirror for him. So he's just going to go a little bit deeper, let the car through. And I thought he was going quite slowly here. Yeah, he's really giving up some of the time, and he couldn't really have been more over. So I think that's just a racing incident. Maybe just a bit of a misjudgment there from the Nita Velux car, closing up a little bit more than he expected the car to be there, if you know what I mean.
So we've only got 20 seconds left. I believe Maricek is coming around the final corner now. So I think we're going to get one more lap. Yes, we are. He's coming down into turn 1. In theory, he actually had enough time to slow down to avoid this extra lap. But if you have the fuel, you might as well do it anyway. And that gives us everyone an extra lap. So we're now at 0 minutes remaining in Burst Esport. All they have to do with David Maricek is finish this final lap for them to have a dominant win here at the 3 Hours of Indianapolis. It's been such a good race from them, not only from the speed side, but the strategy side. But we will get another look here with Rory McDuff. So he's gone past. He sees him going to the left. He sees him brake. He thinks that he's got it. He's now turning in. But obviously, the Speedy Mike was still there. And he's probably going to have a bit of rear damage from that, actually. So that is not ideal. But now Andonovski, is he going to do a final lap lunge on the back of Pashko Schmidt? Not quite enough overspeed into that. So this could be that final chance gone, because the only other real opportunity is sending it down the inside over the curbs, which is not really what you want to do in turn 12. As we see David Maricek come around sector 3, he is going to be taking victory here at the 3 Hours of Indianapolis. It looks like he's almost weaving there, coming through the final corner. He is going to be happy with this one. Burst Esport gets another victory, and Andonovski dives it down the inside as well. Can he get 6th place on the final corner of the final lap as Maricek takes victory for Burst Esport? It seems like Schmidt will hold on for 6th place, and Timo there in 7th place indeed. But these guys behind, a lot of them are laps, but some are still driving. Who gets to the line? It is Pascal Schmidt and then Andonovski. But who else is going to come through? Because obviously all the laps we've mentioned are quite far all over the place with the gaps. So it'll be Happening for Cetres Nita Velux, number 30, to come across into 2nd place. 30 seconds behind the leader, though. They're going to want to improve that when we get to Bathurst in a month's time. Then One Move Esports will round out the podium, but they are another further 30 seconds behind as well. And also Jonathan Prevost will be getting 4th place. So these guys have done a pretty good job, I think it is safe to say, Hugo. But certainly the BOP spice things up a little bit, and certainly is going to have a different outlook for the second half of the championship.
Yeah, most definitely. I didn't think well, beforehand, we wouldn't have seen a Bentley in such a competitive position. You can see there, Ludovic Ferrari very happy with that. And this is the undercover car, which we saw absolutely shine with Major at the wheel earlier on in the race. Jonathan Provost doing well, though, to take her home in the 4th place, just coming through the final turn now, because what's been really interesting, you see flashing his lights, he's pretty happy with that, because the Bentley, we wouldn't have expected, had that BOP change not happened, we wouldn't have expected it to be on the podium, and now we've finished P3 and P4. So I think it's good to see that the closure up of the field, and also I think the Nita Velix as well doing well to stay within 40 seconds or so of the race leaders. So hopefully when Bottas comes around, it'll be a little bit closer at the top and maybe a potential other winner. But you've got to give it to Burst. They've just been sensationally quick.
Yeah, they've been very quick, not only this race, but during the season as well. And here, as we see some nice slow-mos of David Mrocek, we will get a word with him and his teammate Mitch Uhoya. So firstly, David, you obviously had that final stint in the race. How was that for you, obviously jumping in a fairly nice position?
Hi. Yeah, actually it wasn't as simple as it looked, because we didn't expect the race to be 127 laps. We've expected it to be like 25 or 36. So actually I had to save quite a lot of fuel at the beginning of my stint, but well, basically everything was under control. So well, we are just very happy, because I don't know if I think it's like our 4th victory this season, or I'm not sure even. Yeah.
Yes, you're 4th in 5 races, so you're going to have a very comfortable championship lead. And now, Mitch, I'll ask you, you obviously did the first couple of stints. There was a little bit of intrigue about your strategy options. Can you just explain that for us a little bit and what you decided to do?
Yeah, I was short before asking David on the radio whether people are moving their heads around our pace. But yeah, what we actually did is it was quite obvious that the race was going to have a short stint or a short run, either, well, in the beginning, in the end, or in the middle. And we just had to manage it on the fly. And I was like, we have a 10-second gap now. What if we just pull our short stint into the 2nd position, and I'm trying to build a gap, and then David gets the car in the end, and we're gonna see what it is all about. Obviously, that strategy move got us into the position where we suddenly were a little too quick overall, making the race a lap longer than expected. So sort of we kind of cut ourselves off a little bit here, but yeah, I mean, car was amazing, pace was good, we had good traffic management as well, and yeah, I think it was the right decision, was a good call to just stay clean and give no one really a chance to touch us and just drive home.
And with the I don't know if you've thought about this, but with there being 3 races left after this one, if all things go considered, you might be able to win the championship next time out in Bathurst. So have you thought about that yet, or are you just taking it race by race?
No, we're just taking it race by race. I mean, always you look with one eye into the championship, of course, but at the end of the day, loads of things can happen: a disconnect, engine failure, or whatever mechanical or technical issue. I mean, with R Factor 2 being updated and lately being very unstable, you never know what's going to happen next on the simulation. So there's always possibility we may drop out and hit 0 points or whatever. So yeah, to finish first, you have to finish first.
Indeed. So yeah, congratulations to you both, and we'll see you in a month's time for Bathurst. So very good track indeed. And yeah, until then, good luck.
Thanks.
And Hugo, that was certainly quite a hectic race, but it's certainly full of action as well. And I think it's going to be opening door to a pretty good finish to the season.
Yeah, definitely. And with this change in some of the order, seeing different cars up at the top. I think with these last 3 races ahead of us, we're going to see some really interesting racing, especially moving on to Bathurst next week, leaving the Americas. It's a completely different style of track, and with the competition we have in this championship, it's going to be really interesting to see how that all plays out.
Indeed. So yeah, next time out, we will be going to Bathurst, as we said, and that will be the 6th race of 8. That'll be on the 27th of March. As you can see, we've already done Silverstone, Nürburgring, Imola, and Portland today in Indianapolis. But until Bathurst in 4 weeks' time on the 27th of March, this has been Cameron Roger and Hugo Barrow. Thank you to our cameraman, Ruben Correa Alves, and we will see you next time.